Chapter 404. Hiss! The red thread snake hissed. It was as if someone was whistling his foot. He tried hard to make a sound, but it was not loud or pleasant at all. The red thread flew towards Zhou Fan, who was lying on the ground, as fast as lightning. If it was an ordinary person, such as Zhou Fan, even if the tiny red thread entered his body through his nostrils, ears or mouth, and gave birth to a nest of red thread snakes in his stomach, he would not be aware of it. However, in Fang Yan's eyes, he could clearly see the red lines every move, and even its two black eyes that were like dots. It was a red thread snake. Fang Yan was no stranger to this kind of red thread snake. Previously, when he fought with the Snake Lord had used such a disgusting thing that was impossible to guard against to poison him. However, the Snake Lord had been subdued by Fang Yan and had his snake eye. As long as Fang Yan crushed the snake eye, the Snake Lord would die on the spot. The Snake Lord's life was to become Fang Yan's snake slave and be used by him. It was impossible for him to have the guts to resist and poison Fang Yan. Of course, there was also the possibility that the Snake Lord wanted to poison Fang Yan's family to death and then take away his snake eye from Fang Yan. However, Fang Yan knew that this person was not the Snake Lord. At first contact, he knew that this person was not the Snake Lord. There were many senses in the human body. Fang Yan was quite confident in his combat sense. Zhou Fan was lying on the snow silently. After a day and a night of suffering, his physical strength had been exhausted. He had just experienced a life and death crisis. Because of the appearance of Fang Yan, he could not hold on any longer. He directly lay on the ground and fainted. Zhou Fan did not have the ability to save himself, and Fang Yan could not just watch his uncle get killed by the red thread snake. Although he had said not to let him down, he could not really abandon his uncle. It was a matter of life and death. His life was hanging by a thread. Fang Yan's Taiji heart spun even more crazily. The airflow formed a white whirlpool that could devour everything. Fang Yan felt a sharp pain in his dantian, as if the heat from the rotation was going to burn his skin and flesh. The Taiji domain was unleashed to the extreme, and the movement of the red snake turned into a tiny line. Even though he started later, he arrived first. Fang Yan's body flipped and jumped in the air, chasing after the red-lined snake that was about to enter Zhou Fan's body at a ghostly speed. Seeing that the red thread viper was about to land on the ground and attack, Fang Yan suddenly threw out the corner of his robe that he was holding. The lower hem of the robe contained an abundant amount of Taiji energy. It was like gold or iron, a murderous weapon. Hoo! Wherever the hem of the robe passed, the air was ignited by its heat, emitting a crisp crackling sound. In front of it, there was a rectangular airless vacuum. Pa! His sleeves whipped the red thread snake's body, sending it flying. Hiss! The red-lined snake let out a few weak cries and fell to the ground. It had already become a dead snake. Fang Yan rushed over and stepped on it. Crack! The red-lined snake's body and the snow on the ground were stepped on by Fang Yan, merging into a pool of red and white mud. The red-lined snake was raised on corpse blood, so the blood inside had a strong stench. Zhou Fan was still sleeping soundly, unaware of the danger outside. Fang Yan saved his uncle and helped him out of danger. When he turned to look at the black-robed man, he had already disappeared. However, when Fang Yan tore off his black robe, he still managed to catch a glimpse of him in a hurry. What kind of face was that? A very ordinary person with a very ordinary face. His skin was as pale as paper, as if he had never seen the light of day. The most memorable thing was that he only had one eye. On the side of his cheek where he had lost his eye, there was a shocking hole in his flesh. The blood had already drained. The wound had already healed. But the uneven skin and the protruding sarcoma of the meridians were still nauseating. This was a caveman, and also a dead man. When Zhou Fan opened his eyes, his wife Fang Yijing was sitting next to him, looking at him with a worried expression. Zhou Fan's mouth moved, but no words came out. "You're awake?" Fang Yijing grabbed her husband's hand and asked. "Are you thirsty? Are you hungry? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Zhou Fan blinked and asked. "I'm not dead." He remembered that he was already dead. The ice and snow covered him, and there was a crystal-clear snow bag where he laid. That was his coffin. I'm not dead, Fang Yijing said with reddened eyes. Fang Yin saved you, Yi Zichen said. You didn't lie to me, Zhou Fan said. What? Everyone in your family knows Kung Fu, Zhou Fan said. I know Fang Yin knows Kung Fu. I saw him perform Kung Fu. It was amazing, like he was filming a movie. I didn't lie to you. You didn't lie to me either, Fang Yijing grabbed her husband's hand and smiled. You said you would get along well with my family, and you really did it. Zhou Fan's expression was full of guilt. I've let you down. If it wasn't for me. You didn't let anyone down, Fang Yijing put Zhou Fan's hand on her face and said with reddened eyes. Zhou Fan, thank you. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for telling the truth to Fang Yin. Thank you. For not being so selfish. Fang Yin said that if it wasn't for you, our family could have been poisoned. My dad also praised you, saying that you're indeed Fang Hui's son-in-law. My dad rarely praises people, especially these past few years. The only person he praised was Fang Yin, really? Zhou Fan asked with tears streaming down his face. Did they really say that? Zhou Mingli felt so wronged but also so touched. What did he go through in the past 2 days? He was just a normal little official. He just wanted to come to his wife's hometown to spend Chinese New Year with his father-in-law. How did he encounter something like this? First, he had a conflict with Fang Yin. He was ridiculed and bullied to the point of death. He just wanted to go out for a walk. But he met a black-cloaked man who fed him a poison, then gave him a bottle of potion, and told him to poison his father-in-law's family. Did he die? Or did his father-in-law's family die? This wasn't a problem. This was a F***king world-class problem. He hesitated for a long time. He didn't even report what happened to him to the Fang family immediately. For a period of time, he was really considering how to poison the soup pot. Of course he failed. His strange behavior was already noticed by Fang Yin. He knew that he was a selfish person, and also knew that he was the sinner of the Fang family. He felt that neither his wife nor the Fang family would forgive him. Fortunately, it was all over now. He was still alive, and so was his father-in-law's family. Moreover, he, who had never been recognized by them, actually received their praise. Was this the sweet after the bitter? It's true. They're discussing something outside. You'll know when you go out. Fang Yijing also nodded with tears on her face. I'm not going out, Zhou Fan said. He reached out and hugged his wife, saying, I just want to be alone with you for a while. The Fang family's living room. The children were all taken to their rooms to sleep by their mother. Only Fang Hui, Fang Yixing, Fang Hao, Zhao Qingxin, and the junior Fang Yan were left in the living room. Lu Wan also went out after making tea for everyone. She knew that the men of the Fang family had something very important to discuss today. She didn't know until now that what she thought was a peaceful New Year's Eve dinner was actually hiding such a dangerous thing. Looking at her son Fang Yin, who was sitting calmly next to his grandfather, Lu Wan's heart was filled with comfort. Her son had grown up and could share the family's worries. No, not only could he share the family's worries, he could already support the Fang family's image. It's just that this child is working too hard. If only there was someone who could share the burden with him. Lu Wan thought to herself that it was time to arrange a marriage for Fang Yin. Fang Yin still didn't know about his mother's evil thoughts, he said. This is a ruthless move, but also unexpected. They're trying to get rid of our entire family without making a sound. Fortunately, they chose the wrong chess piece. They chose Zhou Fan to carry out this plan. However, no matter how much Zhou Fan hated the Fang family, and how much he hated Fang Yin, he didn't have the intention to eliminate the entire Fang family. They asked Uncle to poison the soup pot to kill us, his wife and his child. As long as you're a man, you'll have a little bit of resistance, right? Uncle said that the mission was completed, so they killed Uncle's wife and child. After understanding Uncle's choice, they were extremely angry, feeling that Uncle had lied to them. Our opponent is not only a psychopath, but also a psychopath, right? Just like what Fang Yin said, when faced with the decision to poison his wife, child, and all of his wife's family, anyone would feel uneasy. Zhou Fan was a selfish and timid person. However, this didn't mean that he had completely lost his humanity. He was hostile to the Fang family and hated Fang Yin. But it was only because of the bad feeling in his heart, and a few words that he said. If he wanted the Fong family to fight and kill, he wouldn't be able to do such a thing. After he got the antidote, he came back like a stray dog. His strange behavior was hidden from his wife, Fong Yijing, and many people in the Fong family, but it couldn't be hidden from Fong Yan. Under Fong Yan's pressure, he finally confessed to Fong Yan everything that had happened to him. Fong Yan was shocked after hearing it, but he signaled Zhou Fan to keep quiet and beat him at his own game. The medicine that Zhou Fan threw into the soup pot was not the soulless lure, but a tonic called Lingji that Fong Yan gave him. Putting it into the soup pot wouldn't be harmful to the human body, and it could even be beneficial. Chapter 405. War was a competition of strength and wisdom, but the most important thing was luck. If Fong Yan didn't notice Zhou Fan's abnormality, if Zhou Fan refused to admit that he encountered the black-robed man, and only said that he felt uncomfortable, or that he felt uncomfortable when he saw Fong Yan, would the story have a different ending? The real soul-losing attraction was fed into a rabbit's mouth by Fong Yan. The rabbit didn't die immediately after eating the soul-losing attraction, and it didn't look any different from before it ate the medicine. Fong Yan understood that the other party had put in a slow-acting poison. Seeing that the rabbit didn't eat, Zhou Fan asked Fong Yan if it was a prank. Fong Yan didn't believe it was a prank. After so many life-and-death hunts, he knew that those people outside were far more vicious than he could imagine. There was nothing they couldn't do. For a sensitive place like Swallow Fort, they could only use a slow-acting poison if they wanted to make such a big move. If the Fong family died tragically on New Year's Eve, the impact of this event would be too great. It wasn't something that ordinary people could suppress. No one dared to suppress it. Fong Yan wasn't sure if the Fong family had other puppets, and he didn't know if someone was watching Zhou Fan and the Fong family. If someone was watching, and Zhou Fan didn't carry out the task, they might make another move. Therefore, he asked Zhou Fan to put the poison in the soup pot according to the plan. At the dinner table, Zhou Fan suddenly apologized to everyone and toasted them 3 times. This was Zhou Fan's impromptu performance. At that time, Zhou Fan was still suffering from the poison. He wasn't sure if he could survive the night, and he wasn't sure if he could get the antidote from the black-robed man. Although Fong Yan promised him that he would help him get the antidote. However, the black-robed man was so powerful, and Fong Yan, he was just a young and clever kid. In the hearts of ordinary people, bad guys were always more ferocious and terrifying than good guys. Zhou Fan apologized to everyone for his behavior for so many years. Fong Yan was worried that he would mess up the show. Fortunately, he had been controlling his emotions and forcefully took back the topic. Therefore, when Fong Yan clinked glasses with him at the dinner table, he said that he thought he could still be saved. Everything that happened after that was logical. Zhou Fan's acting skills were off the charts. After everyone finished their soup, he used the excuse of going to the bathroom and ran into the wilderness. Originally, Fong Yan thought that the black-robed man would not give the antidote to Zhou Fan so easily. The most likely scenario was that he would kill Zhou Fan. He was going to die anyway, so why waste an antidote? It turned out that bad people also had a side of them that kept their promises. If I say I'll give you the antidote, I'll give you the antidote. If I say I'll kill you, I'll definitely kill you. Zhou Fan got the antidote, and Fong Yan blocked the black-robed man's attack and saved Zhou Fan. After listening to Fong Yan's story, the whole family fell into a long silence. This is luck and also a blessing. Fong Hui sighed and said, "It proves that our Fong family should not fall, nor should we fail." "Who is that black-robed man?" Zhao Qingxin looked at Fong Yan and said, "Do you want me to use my connections in Yanjin to investigate?" "That's fine," Fong Yan said. "Whether it works or not, we have to show the outside world that we were bullied. It's better to do it sooner than later." "I'll arrange it now," Zhao Qingxin said. "I'll take some people to the mountain to check." "Second uncle, there's no need to check the mountain," Fong Yan said with a smile. "He's gone." Fong Hui nodded and said, "From what Fong Yan said, he's definitely gone. However, after daybreak, send a few good stalkers to take a look. Maybe they can find some clues." "Got it." Zhao Qingxin agreed, and went to the yard to make a call. Obviously, he was going to use the Zhao family's power in Yanjin. We have to find out who he is. Fang Hao's face was full of murderous intent. We didn't poison him this time. But what about next time? What about the next time? It's really hard to eat and sleep with an enemy like him. Fang Hui nodded and said, what Fang Hao said makes sense. Our Fang family doesn't bully others. But we can't let others bully us for no reason. If we get slapped, we'll take it. If we get slapped a second time, we should at least ask why, right? The old man looked at Fang Yan and said, Fang Yan, what do you think? Grandpa, let me handle this matter, Fang Yan said coldly. If we let him escape this time, he won't be so lucky next time. That's settled, Fang Hui said. Let Fang Yan handle this matter. It's getting late. Go and rest. Fang Yixing looked at Fang Yan and said, be careful. I will, Fang Yan said. Dad, you go and rest. We still have to get up early tomorrow morning to pay New Year's greetings. You have to come with us this year, Fang Hui said. We'll have to go to every household after coming back. Those who helped us before, go and kowtow to their elders. Those who bullied us before, practice with their juniors. Don't hide at home like a coward. Fang Yan smiled bitterly and said, isn't this bullying? What do you mean by bullying? This is showing off our strength, Fang Hui said coldly. The country also conducts military exercises from time to time. What's wrong with showing off our strength? New Year's Eve was also the golden time to say goodbye to the old and welcome the new. Before midnight, Fang Yan's phone began to ring. Most of them were from Rosefinch Secondary students and colleagues in the office. Zhu Jian and Li Mingqiang, who thought they were close to Fang Yan, called him personally. Zhu Jian's call was relatively simple. He only asked when Fang Yan would return to Huaqing, and asked Fang Yan to go to his house for a meal and a drink. Fang Yan told them in advance that he would return to Yanjing for the Spring Festival. They didn't contact Fang Yan during the holiday. Fang Yan said he would return after the Spring Festival. So Zhu Jian said to go to his house for a drink on the 14th of the first lunar month. He was worried that Fang Yan would have an appointment on the 15th. And the 16th was the day school reopened. Of course, the third-year students would start school on the 9th of the first lunar month, and their studies would be more arduous. Li Mingqiang's call was much more intimate and polite. He also asked where Fang Yan's home was in Yanjing. He planned to go to Yanjing after the Spring Festival, mainly to bring his family and children on a trip. He also wanted to visit Fang Yan's and Fang Yan's parents and elders at the same time. He said that it was a courtesy that he should perform. Fang Yan declined again and again. Only then did Li Mingqiang give up on the idea of going to Yanjing to visit Fang Yan for the Spring Festival. One of the school's vice principals was not feeling well. He had said before the Spring Festival that he would be retiring early this year. There were many people eyeing that position, and Li Mingqiang was the most powerful competitor. There were 3 people who could decide that position. The school board member Lu Chaoga, the current principal Zhang Xiaofeng, and the shadow principal Fang Yan. Li Mingqiang knew that if he had Fang Yan, he would have the votes of the school board member and the shadow principal. Even if Zhang Xiaofeng objected, it would be useless. Unfortunately, Fang Yan had already communicated with Zhang Xiaofeng and made other arrangements for this position. Mr. Fang, Happy New Year. The person who secretly likes you. An unknown number sent such a message. Fang Yan thought of something and immediately dialed that number. The call went through, but it was an impatient boy's voice. Who are you? Who are you looking for? Fang Yan hesitated for a few seconds and took the initiative to hang up. Since the other party didn't want to expose himself, there was no need for him to probe aggressively. At such an age, who didn't have a crush that sounded exciting, but was actually sad and pitiful? There was a joke on the internet. It said that you might not remember who sent you a message during the Spring Festival, but you would remember clearly who didn't send you a message. As time went by, it was getting closer to midnight. Fang Yan's phone was getting more and more busy. Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan stayed by Fang Yan's side. Seeing that Fang Yan was busy answering messages and answering phone calls, the two of them felt a little sad when they looked at the phone in their hands. They waited for a long time, but there was not a single message or phone call. On such a special night, they were like orphans forgotten by the world. Ding! The phone in Fang Yingying's hand finally rang. Fang Yingying was so excited that the fat on his face kept shaking. While Fang Yin was drinking water, he said very discontentedly, I don't know who sent me a message to wish me well. I hate this kind of cheap blessing method the most. They are not even willing to write a blessing, and the blessing message is copied and forwarded. 8,000 people out of 10,000 receive the same message. It's a waste of money. Fang Yingying opened his message in front of Fang Yan. There was only one message in the empty inbox, and the name of the message was so familiar. Fang Family Hero. Fang Yingying was stunned for half a second and wanted to quickly hide the phone. Open it and see. Fang Yan held the teacup and said, Let's see what Fang Haohan said to you. There's no need for that, right? Fang Yingying said with a bitter face. It's possible that Fang Haohan wrote a love poem to some girl, but this idiot accidentally chose the wrong recipient and sent it to me. Love poem? Fang Yan's heart of gossip was burning, and it was even more ferocious than the spinning of the heart of Tai Chi. Open it and see. Otherwise, I'll do it myself. Fang Haohan shook his head vigorously, signaling Fang Yingying not to open the message. What are you shaking for? Do you think you're a roly-poly doll? Fang Yingying said angrily. The two of us are sitting together, and the straight line distance is less than 2 meters. What can't we say directly? You just have to waste a message fee. Fang Haohan still shook his head, and he shook even more violently. Open it. Fang Yan's curiosity was aroused, and he said to Fang Yingying. Fang Yingying had no choice but to take out his phone and open the message sent by Fang Haohan. Fang Yingying, Happy New Year. You also quickly send me a blessing message. Don't let Junior Marshall Uncle see it. Remember. Chapter 406. O to the power of O. At first, Fang Yan's expression was like this. Smiley face. Then, Fang Yan's expression changed again. : In the end, Fang Yan's expression became like this. Fang Yan wanted to say something. He wanted to tease her or say some comforting words, but he couldn't say anything. He patted Fang Yingying's shoulder, then Fang Haohan's shoulder. A compassionate look that said, I understand you and I'm with you. Fang Yingying's face was extremely embarrassed. He said to Fang Haohan with dissatisfaction, I hope my life will turn into that lotus, and I will abandon all fame and fortune. Let the world praise God's freedom, and we only need to monopolize the world. Haven't you heard of this song? Didn't you understand its essence? The people of the inner Jianghu are all peerless powerhouses who live in seclusion. We don't seek fame, nor are we greedy for benefits. What kind of spectacle do we not have? Seen it before? What great temptation have we not experienced? Why would we care about a mere congratulatory message? Fang Haohan, if you want a blessing, just say it. Junior Marshall Uncle, and I will satisfy you. It's not a big deal, is it? Was there a need to specially send a message asking for it? You even said not to let Junior Marshall Uncle see it. What kind of thoughts are you having? I, Fang Yingying, do things in an open and aboveboard manner. There is nothing that I cannot say to others. Junior Marshall Uncle is our elder brother. Do we need to lie to him? I don't care what you Fang Haohan do. Anyway, I, Fang Yingying, would never do such a thing. As Fang Yingying was passionately criticizing Fang Haohan, the phone in his hand rang again. Ding dang. It was still the sound of a message from his phone. We are masters, and masters should have the demeanor of masters. As Fang Yingying spoke, he opened the message. After glancing at it, his eyes widened, and the fat on his face trembled. He jumped up from the sofa excitedly and shouted, Missy sent me a message. Missy sent me a message. Ding dang. Fang Haohan's phone also rang with the sound of a text message. Fang Haohan opened his phone and jumped up as well. His body was thin, tall, and long, and when he jumped he looked like a dancing skeleton. Missy also sent me a message. Missy has also sent me a message. Fang Yin looked at his phone. It was lying there quietly. It was as if it was dead, not moving at all. He didn't receive a message from Yi Ro. Yi Ro seemed to have forgotten him. Fang Yin looked at Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan unhappily and said, What did Yi Ro, that savage woman, send you? Happy New Year. Fang Yingxiong said excitedly. His eyes were glued to the phone screen, as if he was afraid that the words would disappear. Happy New Year. Only 4 simple words, which was indeed in line with Yi Ro's style. If she said a lot of nonsense, she wouldn't be Iro. What about you? Fong Yin looked at Fong Haohan and asked. Happy New Year too, Fong Haohan said. Missy also wishes me a Happy New Year. Fong Yin sneered and said. The same blessing must be copied and pasted. Impossible. Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan denied at the same time. Why is it impossible? Fong Yingxiong and Fong Haohan looked at each other. The two of them put their phones together and studied it carefully. Happy New Year. It was all the same words. Suddenly, Fong Haohan shouted as if he had discovered a new continent. It's not a copy and paste. It must not be a copy and paste. Missy wrote the blessing for me and Hero herself. Look, there is a sentence after my Happy New Year. And there is an exclamation mark after Hero's Happy New Year. Fong Yingying looked at Fong Yen and said, By the way, Junior Marshal Uncle, Missy must have sent you a message a long time ago, right? What did she say to you? Fong Yen didn't bother to look at their complacent faces. He went to the yard and called some people. He received a lot of congratulatory messages, but some people had to be called by him personally. For example, his maternal grandparents, the principal of Rosefinch, Zhang Xiaofeng, and the principal of Ivy League High, Zhong Dei, and other elders needed Fong Yen to take the initiative to call them. Fong Yen called his grandpa and grandma first. His grandma greeted the whole family patiently, and then gave the phone to his grandpa. His grandpa just asked him if he would come to Huaqing next year, and when he would come to Huaqing. After getting Fong Yan's reply, he hung up the phone. Principal Zhang Xiaofeng was watching the Spring Festival Gala with his wife. He simply said a few words to Fong Yan, confirmed Fong Yan's return date after the new year, and hung up. Zhong Dei was still drinking with his family. He was very surprised to receive Fong Yan's call. He laughed and invited Fong Yan for a drink after the new year. After Fong Yan finished these calls, he was about to go back to his room when he saw fireworks exploding in the distant sky. The colorful fireworks lit up the night sky, making the sky above Swallow Dock glitter with red light. It looked more gorgeous and dazzling than usual. Then more fireworks soared into the sky. The flowers bloomed, and the sky was lively like a fireworks show. Swallow Dock didn't have the custom of setting off fireworks. These fireworks were set off in Yanjing City, or other villages around Yanjing City. Fong Yen stood in the yard and watched the fireworks for a while. Suddenly, he thought of a woman who was as gorgeous as fireworks but lonely. He dialed the number, and it took a while for the phone to be picked up. Fong Yen. The woman's crisp and cold voice came from the phone. It's me, Fong Yen said with a smile. What are you doing? Why did you take so long to pick up? I just took a shower, the woman said. When I came out, I saw my phone was ringing, so I picked up late. Taking a shower? Fong Yen imagined the image of Lu Chaoga taking off her clothes and taking a red wine bath. His handsome face suddenly turned red. These women, Fong Yen thought angrily. Every word they say carries some kind of obscure hint. If you're not careful, you'll fall into their trap. Have you had dinner? Fong Yen asked. Yes, I have. Lu Zhaoga's voice became gentler. After coming back from the company, I fried myself a steak and drank a bottle of red wine. I'm about to take a shower and read a book before going to bed. I don't have the habit of watching the Spring Festival Gala. I don't have the habit of watching the Spring Festival Gala either, Fong Yen said with a smile. Actually, there's nothing interesting about the Spring Festival Gala. Today is New Year's Eve. Why did you go to the company? The first sample is out. Lu Chaoga's voice became excited. We've tried it on some equipment, and the performance is very good. Now Chaoyan Research Institute is further optimizing and improving it. When the product is fully mature, after a 3-month run-in period, we can produce the product and send it to the market through various channels. An energy reform is about to be pulled by us. The curtain has begun. When we occupy the market, they will either cater to us or be eliminated by us. Hearing this good news, Fong Yen was also very happy and said, You're moving very fast. I thought it would take at least 6 months to a year to see the product go online. I didn't expect you to shorten the time so much, but you still have to pay attention to the balance of work and rest. After working so hard for so long, take advantage of the Spring Festival to rest for a few days. I don't want to rest, Lu Chaoga said. Why? Because if you rest, you don't know what to do. Fang Yin was silent. The other end of the phone stopped talking. Yes, if you rest, you don't know what to do. It was the Spring Festival now. And today was New Year's Eve. Other families were all reunited, drinking wine, eating dumplings, watching TV and setting off fireworks, happy and harmonious. But what about Lu Chaoga? Her parents had left her a long time ago. And her sister-in-law had also passed away from her injuries some time ago. In this world, she no longer had any relatives. All she had were those enemies who were like wolves and tigers. Their blood-red eyes stared fiercely at Lu Chaoga, coveting this soft woman who held the treasure in her hand. As long as they were not careful, they would be devoured by them until not even their bones were left. Even now, during the second they were talking, there were probably many people hiding in the dark who wanted to take her life or take away the Rubik's Cube technology, right? The ancients said that one must brave the dragon's pool and the tiger's den. However, because of absolute wall, Lu Chaoga was in the dragon's pool and the tiger's den every second of every day, right? When he was not there, Huaqing was too dangerous for that woman. I'm inviting you now. Next year, you must come back with me for the Spring Festival, Fang Yin said seriously. Okay, I promise you. Lu Chaoga laughed softly. Even on the other end of the phone, Fang Yin could hear her clear and melodious laughter. Pa! A firework bloomed beside his ear. Fang Yin looked up at the sky above him. The place where the firework was set off was very far away from him. Someone is setting off fireworks in the neighborhood, Lu Chaoga said faintly. What beautiful fireworks! Fang Yin finally understood that someone was setting off fireworks on Lu Chaoga's side. The sound of the fireworks exploding came through the phone, which was why Fang Yin felt it was so real and so loud. Pa pa pa! Fireworks rose into the sky one after another, exploding one after another. Fang Yin did not speak, and neither did Lu Chaoga. Under the same starry sky, the two of them enjoyed different fireworks. Two people snuggling up to each other and enjoying fireworks together was romantic, but one person enjoying fireworks alone was a waste. Like the moon, like the stars, your seductive blooming, crying so loudly, who is it setting your clothes on fire, tasting the wind and rain, you are so beautiful, and sad after prosperity, is desolation after desolation, is forgetting why not to bury my body with it. The wine of tears drinking full of vicissitudes, distance so far, missing so long. Fireworks were lonely, she was even more lonely than fireworks. Chapter 407. Fireworks, Silver Flowers and Sleepless Nights. The sound of fireworks and firecrackers didn't stop. Because it was close to midnight, they were getting more and more frequent in the starry sky where Fang Yin was in thousands of miles away. Lu Chaoga didn't speak again, and neither did Fang Yin. Lu Chaoga was focused on watching the fireworks, and Fang Yin was watching the fireworks with her on the other end of the phone. At this time, words had become a superfluous and inappropriate way of communication. She was really lonely during the festival alone, so he accompanied her on the phone. For him, he could only do this much. For her, this was enough. Time passed by, and the fireworks were set off one after another. They wanted to continue like this, until the sky fell and the earth cracked, until the seas dried up and the rocks rotted, until the mountains became flat, until the sky and the earth merged, until the smartphone ran out of battery. Yes, just as Fang Yin thought that they were going to continue in this wonderful state for a long time. The phone placed by his ear began to heat up, and there was a beep 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 sound of battery alarm. According to Fang Yin's experience, he knew that the phone's battery was about to run out. The battery life of today's smartphones was too short. When their new energy technology, the Rubik's Cube, was popularized, this problem could be solved. A battery could be used for half a month, and the wife would have to worry about the problem of her husband not coming home. Is the phone out of battery? Lu Chaoga, who was on the other end of the phone, also heard the beep sound. She said with a smile, Fang Yin, thank you for watching the fireworks with me. I'm very calm now, and I don't feel very lonely. The fireworks tonight are really beautiful. Fang Yin nodded. After nodding, he remembered that Lu Chaoga couldn't see him at all. So he quickly said, the fireworks tonight are very beautiful. Then that's it, Lu Chaoga said. I think you must be very busy tonight. I'm not very busy, Fang Yin said. He didn't do much tonight. He just chased away a killer, saved a family's life, received a few messages, made a few phone calls, and was despised by Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan. Dang dang dang. The old bell in the east of the village was rung by the bellkeeper, which meant that the old year had passed, and the new year had arrived. It meant that Swallow Fort had protected Huaxia for another year. It meant that Huaxia had been blessed with good weather and a bumper harvest. The country was prosperous, and the people were at peace. Saying goodbye to the old year and welcoming the new year was indeed something worth ringing the bell to boast about. Happy New Year, Lu Chaoga said. Happy New Year, Fang Yin said. After thinking for a while, he added, I'll be returning to Flower City soon. Yes, the students are about to start school. See you in Flower City. See you in Flower City. Fang Yin hung up the call with Lu Chaoga. He was about to go back to his room to change the battery when the phone in his hand rang again. Fang Yin looked at the caller ID and answered the call again. He smiled and said, Jiang Qin, Happy New Year. Mr. Fang, Happy New Year. Jiang Qin's sweet voice came through the phone. Mr. Fang, who are you talking to? I've been calling for half an hour. Your phone has been busy. I didn't know you were a talkative person before. Fang Yin smiled and said, I've been calling my friends to wish me a Happy New Year. Humph. I wanted to be the first to wish you a Happy New Year, Jiang Qin said, feeling wronged. Am I the first person to wish you a Happy New Year? No, Fang Yin said honestly. The first person to wish him a Happy New Year was Lu Chaoga. Their phone call went from last year to the new year. Ah, Jiang Qin shouted with dissatisfaction. Who was earlier than me? Who took my first place? Fang Yin smiled and said, What's the big deal about being first and second? It's fine as long as you get it. Are your parents there? Give them the phone. I'll wish them a Happy New Year. After Fang Yin changed the battery on his phone, Yuan Lin happened to call. Fang Yin also wished her parents a Happy New Year. Fang Yin was going to take some time to give Xia Tian a call, but he didn't expect Xia Tian to call him. Mr. Fang, are you busy today? Xia Tian's voice was very lazy, as if she had just woken up and was lying in bed. No matter how busy a teacher is, he's not as busy as a celebrity, Fang Yin said with a smile. Why do I feel like you're sleeping? Yes. After dinner, I felt sleepy, so I lay in bed and slept. I was just woken up by the sound of firecrackers outside, and thought that the new year had arrived. I turned on my phone and gave you a call for a Happy New Year. It's only midnight, and you've been asleep. Fang Yan's face was full of surprise. Tonight, how do you have time to sleep? According to Fang Yan's understanding of the life of a celebrity, wasn't the new year the busiest time for them? Gala running, cocktail parties, all kinds of etiquette. Even if they didn't attend the Spring Festival Gala of Huaxia TV station, they would attend the New Year's Eve Gala of the local TV station. Even if they didn't attend TV programs, they had to attend some New Year's parties. With Xia Tian's popularity, how could she have time to lie at home and sleep in? I don't want to attend any gala this year. I rejected all the activities. Xia Tian giggled, sounding very happy. I just want to have a meal with my family, and then lie in bed and have a good sleep. I've been busy outside for a whole year, and it's really tiring. After dinner, I turned off my phone. No one can find me, and I can't see or hear any messages or phone calls. This trick really works, and now I'm in a much better mood. It seems that all the hard work of the year has been compensated in this sleep. Rich people are so willful, Fang Yin said with a smile. If I knew earlier, I would also turn off my phone and sleep like you. You can't turn off your phone. If you turn off your phone, I won't be able to call you. Xia Tian said. I haven't had time to ask, what is your relationship with that little girl? Little girl? What little girl? The little girl I saw, Xia Tian said with a smile. It's rare to see a little girl like that. There's only one in our Yinjing city, for hundreds of years. The little princess of the Qin family. TSK, Mr. Fang. I found out that your way is very wild. It's not easy for us to meet, but we're standing at the entrance of the club to wait for you. She's my student, Fang Yin said. That's all? That's all, Fang Yin said. Lanshan Valley also called to pay their New Year's greetings, and the willow tree sent a greeting message. Fang Yan was much busier this spring festival than in previous years. Unknowingly, there were so many people around him. Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan prepared firecrackers in advance and set them off on bamboo poles, which was called Welcome the New Year. After welcoming the New Year, Fang Yan personally went to the kitchen to cut 2 plates of braised meat and walked to the backyard with them. He knew that the old drunkard must not be asleep at this time. The old drunkard was indeed not asleep. He was making wine in the yard. The old drunkard liked to drink and also liked to make wine. Every year on the first day of the new year, he would brew a jar of wine, which was called new wine. The new year would have a new beginning. Perhaps this also represented some of the persistence and hope in his heart. Fang Yan and the old drunkard sat opposite each other and drank. Each of them had a big bowl, and they drank a bowl of wine in one gulp. Fang Yan ate and drank at the same time, while the old drunkard only drank and didn't eat. It was as if drinking could fill him up, and things like meat and vegetables were unnecessary to him. "Who is it?" the old drunkard asked. The old drunkard drank all day, but it didn't mean that he knew nothing about the family. On the contrary, because of his presence, because of him, the Fang family had always been peaceful. Tonight, when Fang Yan went out to catch the murderer, the person who protected the Fang family was this old drunkard, who didn't even want to eat with others during the New Year's Eve dinner. "I only have some clues, but I can't be sure yet," Fang Yan said in a deep voice. However, this time, they want to wipe out the Fang family. There are only a few opponents who can be so generous. A fox will always show its tail, and a fly will always be unable to resist eating *T again. Since they are doing this, they can't blame us for not stopping until one of us is dead. "Just kill them," the old drunkard burped and said calmly. Fang Yin smiled and said, "In the past you were the one who supported the family, but now I will. Don't worry, we won't fall. Just drink your wine, and leave everything else to me. I will drink the wine that I should drink, and I will kill the people that I should kill," the old drunkard said with a clear voice, like a knife burning in a bowl. "I'm only a cripple, not a dead person. Even a stray dog or cat dares to bully us. Do they think the Fang family is nobody? You're not a cripple, it's just that you're meridians." The old drunkard cut off Fang Yan and said, "There was a climber who was good at climbing the mountain, but when he was about to reach the top, he was kicked down. No matter how hard that person tried, they would only be able to climb to the middle of the mountain. Can you still say that person is good at climbing?" Fang Yan's eyes were filled with fighting spirit, saying, "So, I made a decision." The old drunkard looked at Fang Yan with a burning gaze, waiting for him to continue. "I want to challenge Dragon God Huaxia," Fang Yan said very seriously. "He broke 2 of your meridians, I cut off 2 of his dragon claws. That's fair, clang." The old drunkard's finger tapped the side of the bowl, letting out a clear metallic sound. "I've been waiting for these words for too many years," the old drunkard said with an excited voice. "A man's ambition is to leave the village and not return until he becomes famous. There's no need for the red earth to bury one's bones. There are mountains of gold at the end of the world. Martial artists of our generation should have such lofty ambitions. I want to avenge you. Our Fang family isn't that easy to bully. When do you want to challenge the dragon god?" "When my heart of Taiji enters the water overflow realm, I will definitely fight against the dragon god inside the red wall," Fang Yan said. "I believe that day will come very soon." Chapter 408. It was the first day of the new year. According to the customs of the north, every year on the first day of the new year, one had to go to the houses of the villagers to celebrate the new year. They first went to the most senior in the village, then to the oldest, then to their relatives, friends, neighbors, and companions. In the past, it was always Fang Yixing who represented the Fang family to visit each house. Some people would comfort him, some would tease him, and some would even drag him to spar with him. Everyone knew that Fang Yixing didn't like martial arts and abandoned martial arts to pursue literature. Wasn't it insulting to ask Fang Yixing to spar with him? Fang Yixing could only refuse again and again, and then let others laugh at him for a while. The Fang family's reputation gradually declined. This year, Fang Hui asked Fang Yin to accompany Fang Yixing to celebrate the new year. Since the old man had spoken, Fang Yin couldn't disobey. He could only wake up early and put on the green robe and thousand-soled cloth boots that his mother had prepared for him in advance. The boots were made in an antique style to prevent the deep snow from pouring into the shoes and soaking his socks. Fang Yixing still wore simple round cloth shoes. As the head of the family, he had to have the air of a refined elder. He had to endure the cold. This was what it meant to be graceful and not warm. The most respected person in Swallow Dock was the teacher. Everyone in Swallow Dock had to go and pay their New Year's greetings to him. The Yi family was known as the #1 family in Swallow Dock, so they had to send a representative to celebrate the new year with the teacher. Fang Yin held the gift box and followed behind Fang Yixing. The father and son treaded through the snow toward the teacher's small house. When the father and son walked over, there were already many people ahead of them. The teacher finally took off his grayish-brown leather coat and changed into a silver-white tang suit. He sat upright on the mahogany chair in the living room, receiving the kowtows of the young people and children. There were also some middle-aged people who knelt down and kowtowed, but most of them bowed at the waist. After the children finished kowtowing, they presented the gift box in their hands. Bai Xiao, who was standing next to the teacher, took the gift box. The teacher reached out to touch the child's head and said, "You can go to the family school for enlightenment." And so the child kowtowed again. The child's parents also expressed their gratitude happily. Some of the children who were already studying in the family school would also send gifts. The teacher patted the student's head and said, "You're clever enough, but you lack patience. You should use your family's learning stone to train his qi and temper his mind." The students lowered their heads to receive the lesson, and the parents also had to express their gratitude. All the uninitiated children in Swallow Dock had to be approved by the teachers to enter the school, and the students who were already studying would receive the teacher's comments, pointing out their strengths and weaknesses, and pointing out solutions to problems. Fang Yin and Fang Yixing stood outside the house. The weather was freezing, but the father and son did not feel cold at all. Fang Yin looked at the growing queue and said with a smile, "Sir, isn't this a monopoly in the industry? Our Swallow Dock only has one family school, and all children of the right age have to go to school with his permission. This job of his is a guaranteed income." Fang Yixing glanced at Fang Yin sternly and said, "Don't talk nonsense. Mr. is wholeheartedly devoted to the public. What is a gift worth? In my opinion, we should come and thank you on every festival." Fang Yin was helpless. His father was too old-fashioned. He was just joking when he was bored. Not only his father, but many people in Swallow Dock had developed this habit of being old-fashioned. This was also the reason why Mr. always emphasized that every family should send out some talented children. This was also the reason why Lu Dowling wanted to bring out some outstanding young people. Only with a big vision could one have a big heart and big vision. It was not a good thing for Swallow Dock to close its doors, and many things outside were also the best. Take the best and discard the dregs. This was the situation that Swallow Dock needed to change the most. Fang Yin understood, so he went out. Fang Yixing might also understand, but character could not be developed overnight. Instead, he was led forward by the old rules of the village, and was not willing to make new changes. Finally, it was the father and son's turn. Fang Yixing and Fang Yin both knelt down and kowtowed to Mr. seriously. After Fang Yixing said some auspicious words on behalf of the Fang family, Fang Yin handed over the gift box in his hand. Mr. looked at Fang Yin with a smile and said, "You are too slippery. Usually I can't get you to kowtow." Fang Yin felt wronged and said, "Mr. you have wronged me. When do I not come to kowtow to you during Chinese New Year? I kowtowed just now. If you think it is too little, I can kowtow a few more for you." Mr. was very happy to see Fang Yin and said, "You don't have to kowtow. You have 3 hearts and more than 10 guts. I have nothing to say to you, and I have nothing to teach you. Just remember our agreement." Fang Yin nodded seriously and said, "Mr. I remember." Mr. looked at Fang Yixing and said, "Yixing has a good son." Fang Yixing's face was flushed and he thanked him repeatedly. From the beginning to the end, Mr. never mentioned the sword that he lost. If Mr. didn't mention it, Fang Yan wouldn't take the initiative to mention it. Both of them pretended that it had never happened. Bai Xiu looked at Fang Yan and everyone else with a gentle smile. After Fang Yan got up from the ground, he said to Bai Xiu, "If you are tired of standing, let me stand for you for a while." Bai Xiu refused indifferently and said, "If there is anything, I will do it. As your disciple, I naturally have to do my best." Fang Yan was helpless. Bai Xiu's words were equivalent to poking Fang Yan's sore spot. Bai Xiu was Mr.'s disciple, but Fang Yan wasn't. Bai Xiu could be a teacher in the family school, but Fang Yan didn't have the chance to be a teacher there. Mr. taught Bai Xiu everything he had learned in his life, and Bai Xiu was Mr.'s successor. His words were above board, and others really couldn't compete with him for this position. After leaving Mr.'s place, Fang Yixing took Fang Yan and rushed to the Yi family. The Yi family's ancestor was currently the oldest person in Swallow Dock, and the Yi family was also relatively close to the Fang family. With Fang Hui's secret instructions, Fang Yixing naturally wouldn't go against his father's wishes. When the Fang family's father and son arrived, Yi Fengsheng, who looked like a giant Fua doll, was about to leave. He saw Fang Yan and said happily, "Why are you up so early? I was going to kowtow to your grandpa Fang after I'm done kowtowing to Mr. I was also forcefully pulled up," Fang Yan said with a smile. "I've already been to Mr., so I'm here to kowtow to the ancestor now." Actually, he said he was here to kowtow to the Yi family's ancestor, but the Yi family's ancestor wasn't very willing to see guests all these years. Therefore, he was just going through the motions at the Yi family. "We just missed it," Yi Fengsheng said regretfully. "Where's third uncle?" Third uncle rushed back to Yanjing after New Year's Eve dinner last night. "Today, he's going overseas with the minister," Yi Fengsheng said. Yi Daowen walked out the door and saw the Fang family's father and son. He said, "Yixing, Happy New Year." "Fang Yan, Happy New Year." "Big brother Yi, Happy New Year." Fang Yixing and Yi Daowen cupped their fists and bowed. "Uncle, I'm here to wish you a Happy New Year," Fang Yan said with a smile. "I wish you happiness as vast as the East Sea and longevity as long as the South Mountain." Yi Daowen waved his hand and said, "These words are for the ancestor to hear. The ancestor just said that you and your son should go directly to the warm pavilion. I won't entertain you guys, I still have to go congratulate Mr. Fang Yixing was overjoyed and said, "Big brother Yi, go do what you need to do. We'll go to the warm pavilion and kowtow to the ancestor." Thus, the two groups of people parted at the entrance of the courtyard. Fang Yixing was incomparably emotional and said to Fang Yan in a low voice, "This time, I've benefited from you. In the past, when I came to kowtow to the ancestor during the spring festival, I've never entered the warm pavilion. Maybe the ancestor's mood is especially good this year," Fang Yan said with a smile. Fang Yixing looked at his son with a smile and didn't say anything. He thought to himself, perhaps what his father said was really feasible. It was the attitude of the Yi brothers. "I'm afraid this is not going to be easy to pass." The father and son of the Fang family entered the warm pavilion. The Yi family's ancestor, Yi Wenro, and the servant girl Shi sat on the warm kong and played cards. Fang Yixing was the first to kneel down and kowtow 3 times to the ancestor. He also said a lot of blessings. The father had already knelt down. How could the son stand? Fang Yan also quickly followed behind Fang Yixing and knelt down. When the father and son of the Fang family knelt down, Yi Wenro and the servant girl Shi moved to the side. The father and son of the Fang family were kneeling to the ancestor, and the two of them could not accept it. All right, all of you get up." The ancestor squinted his eyes and smiled. "All day long, I've heard you guys talk about living longer than Mount Nanshan. Who can live longer than a mountain? Wouldn't that be a living fossil?" "Ancestor, some mines were emptied in 2 or 3 years," Fang Yan said. "You've lived much longer than those mountains." The ancestor couldn't help but laugh. He pointed at Fang Yan and said, "Ever since he was young, this naughty monkey only knows how to make me happy. It's my fault for not disciplining him well. Ancestor, don't lower yourself to the level of these children." Fang Yixing smiled and apologized. He could also see that the ancestor wasn't really angry with Fang Yan. How can you control whether a child becomes a talent or not? That's taught. The ancestor said. Fang Yin is very good. Whether it's in our swallow fort or outside, he's a first-class talent. Last night when we were having dinner, third bro praised him a lot. The third brother that the ancestor mentioned was the third tiger of the Yi family's 3 tigers, Yi Daoling. Yi Daoling praised Fang Yin at dinner. First, he was indeed grateful for Fang Yan's help. Second, he wanted to encourage the Yi family's children to work hard and improve. No wonder when Fang Yin came in, he saw that the Yi family's people looked at him strangely. It was as if he stole their chicken to set up an ambush. But have you considered Fang Yan's feelings? From Fang Yan's point of view, Yi Daoling, this old fox, was drawing hatred for him. Chapter 409. Some compliments would make you feel sweet in your heart, but disgusted in your mouth. For example, when someone compliments your child. Fang Yixing could hear the old ancestor's love for Fang Yin, but he couldn't follow the old ancestor's words and compliment his own son. If he did that, people would think that he didn't know what was good for him. That's Daoling's love for Fang Yin. He's causing trouble outside, and it's all thanks to Daoling's help. Fang Yixing said modestly, I wanted to find time to invite Daoling to our house for a drink, but I didn't expect him to be in such a hurry to go to Yinjing City. Daoling's promotion has to be celebrated. The old ancestor waved her hand and said, Stop, stop. I don't want to hear about these things. What's the use of telling an old lady like me about the matters of you youngsters? I know you're all busy today, and have many families to visit. Yixing, go do your work. Fang Yin, stay here and play with me. Xier is clumsy, and can't even compare to an old lady like me. Fang Yixing quickly got up from the ground and said, Okay. I'll go to the other families. There really are many families to visit today, and I have to visit every single one of them. Otherwise, it'll be rude. He then turned around and reminded Fang Yin, Play cards with the old ancestor and don't make her angry. Dad, I know. Fang Yin said. Yi Wenru had been kneeling in the corner of the Kong. She was wearing a red button-down blouse with gold-trimmed flowers and a soft black cotton dress. Her long hair was tied up, and her face was ruddy. She looked like a pretty wife. Fang Yin heard from Yi Fengxing that Yi Ro's mother loved needlework. Every spring festival, she would personally sew clothes for her children. She also took care of all the New Year clothes for the Yi family's elders and children. The Fua suit that Yi Fengxing was wearing should have been made by Yi Wenru's mother. The style of the suit was not bad, but there was too much fat on Yi Fengxing's body, making the suit look a little out of place. Yi Ro's classical-style suit was probably made by her mother. The stitches were dense, and the patterns were bright. The red and gold complemented each other. Red makes gold dazzling, and gold makes red noble. Yi Ro looked quite lovely and cheerful in this set of clothes, which concealed much of her cold and aloof character. Xier was scolded by the old ancestor for being clumsy. She purposely pouted and said, I am stupid. Otherwise, why can I only be a maid for the old ancestor? If I was smart, I would have followed Miss to learn martial arts. The great ancestor reached out to pull Xier's mouth and said, You little girl, you're still not happy with my words. See if I don't tear your mouth off. Xier giggled and dodged. She said to Fang Yin, Why don't you take off your shoes and come up? Do you want me to take off your shoes for you? I only serve old ancestor and little miss. No need, no need. Fang Yin knew that Xier had a sharp tongue and was deeply loved by the old ancestor. She had a high status in the Yi family. It was impossible to ask her to take off his shoes. Besides, Fang Yin didn't have the habit of asking others to help him take off his shoes, unless someone held a knife to his neck and forced him to take off his shoes. I'll do it myself. Fang Yin took off his cloth boots and climbed onto the warm Kong barefoot. He sat where Xier had been sitting and said, Shall we start now? How do we play? According to the game, the winner takes all, and the losers each lose 100. The great ancestor said, You didn't bring money, did you? Yes, Fang Yin said with a smile. Old ancestor, are you worried that I can't pay the bill? I'm afraid that you'll run away after you lose, the great ancestor said. Other children don't dare. You dare. Fang Yin smiled shyly and said, Old ancestor, you have a misunderstanding about me. I never owe anything. There was a small square table on the Kong. The great ancestor sat on the inner side, while Fang Yen and Yi Rou sat on the left and right, facing the door. Fang Yen quickly shuffled the cards, and then the game began. It was unknown whether Fang Yen was lucky or scheming, but he won several times in a row. The great ancestor and Yi Rou kept giving him money, and the small drawer in front of him was soon filled with 100 yuan bills. Fang Yen was full of excitement. He changed to a more comfortable position and said, "It seems that I'm going to make a fortune today." Pa! He was kicked in the shin under the table. Only then did Fang Yen realize that he had stretched his leg in front of Yi Rou. He asked, "Why did you kick me?" "My feet smell," Yi Rou said expressionlessly. The great ancestor smiled and said, "It's a little smelly. I can smell it." Fang Yen awkwardly took his foot back and put it under his butt again. He wished he could change to a lying position. In that case, his feet would be able to hide far away. Fang Yen won again. Yi Rou and the great ancestor paid again. Pa! Fang Yan's knee was kicked again. This time, Fang Yan's leg didn't stretch out randomly. It was Yi Rou who stretched her foot under the table and kicked him. Fang Yen felt very wronged. He looked at Yi Rou and said, "Why did you kick me again?" "Feet smell," Yi Rou said. The great ancestor glanced at Yi Rou and said, "You child. Even if Fang Yan's feet smell a little, you can't let people cut off his feet and put them in front of the door of the warm room, and then put them on when he goes out, can you?" Fang Yan laughed and said, "The great ancestor is quite humorous." They played another round, and the great ancestor won. Fang Yan paid quickly. This time, Yi Rou didn't kick Fang Yan under the table. Fang Yan sighed in his heart. People under other people's eaves had to lose money. Creak. A black Mercedes-Benz parked in the flat dojo of Swallow Dock, followed by another Mercedes-Benz. The third was still a Mercedes-Benz, the fourth was an extended Rolls-Royce, and the fifth and sixth were still Mercedes-Benz. The 6 black luxury cars formed a black mighty long dragon, and the Rolls-Royce surrounded by the 5 Mercedes-Benz was naturally the heart of this long dragon. Except for the Rolls-Royce that didn't move, the doors of the other 5 Mercedes-Benz opened with bangs. Then the tall men in black scattered in all directions, looking around with vigilance. Another 2 men in black stood on the left and right of the Rolls-Royce's door, and took the initiative to help open the back door. She wore a white down jacket and a pair of sky blue jeans. The furry snow boots added a bit of playfulness to her appearance. She wore a checkered scarf around her neck, looking like a girl next door who was studying in a foreign place, or a girl next door who worked in a big city and went home to visit her relatives during the spring festival. The girl's small boots stepped on the black soil of the dojo, asking with a sweet voice, "How am I dressed?" A tall and handsome young man in a well-tailored suit stood behind the girl, sizing up the Swallow's Dock village that was surrounded by heavy snow and said, "Very good. It meets your requirements. To make people feel close, but not oppressive." The girl giggled and said, "When there's a sense of oppression, there'll be a sense of distance. That's not good. Miss, is this really worth it?" The man couldn't help but ask. "You have everything. Wisdom, beauty, kindness, wealth, as well as the power that ordinary people yearn for in their entire lives. You have this world, and you also have the right to rule over it. You should be standing proudly in the sky, coldly looking down on the living beings of this world. You've mixed yourself with the grass and trees, staining the bottom of your crystal shoes with mud. Don't you think that's a bit too much?" "He saved me," Qin Etian replied. "Many people have saved you," the young man replied. He pointed at the black-clothed people around him, then at himself, saying, "They including me. We've always been prepared to sacrifice ourselves to protect you." Qin Etian went silent for a bit, then asked, "Muing, do you know Zhang Ailing?" "I do," Muing replied. "She wrote this on the back of Hu Lanqing's photo. In front of you, I've become very, very low to the point of being a speck of dust. But my heart likes it, a flower blooming from the dust." Qin Etian's voice was light. "I really like this sentence. I feel that it's a true reflection of me. I know that I have a lot, but I'm willing to share what I have with him, or let him enjoy it alone. I'm willing. That's enough, isn't it?" Muing lightly sighed and said, "Although I feel that what you said is very reasonable, for some reason, I still find it hard to accept. Because you're a man, Qin Tian replied. And because you don't understand how desperate a woman's sacrifice can be. For example, taking a bullet for him? Qin Tian nodded and said. For example, taking a bullet for him. He must have saved the galaxy in his previous life. No, that's something Superman would do, Qin Tian replied. She glanced at the bodyguards in black who were scattered around vigilantly, and said in a crisp voice. I didn't bring you here to protect me, and no one will hurt me in Swallow Dock. Take out all the gifts I brought. We're going to pay our teacher a New Year's greetings as a result. The group of black-clothed bodyguards, who were domineering and had murderous looks in their eyes, became pitiful laborers. They used their hands to carry, shoulders to hug, and carried a large number of expensive gifts towards the village of Swallow Dock. Even the pretty boy mooing didn't run away, carrying a birdcage in one hand, as he followed behind Qin Tian. This New Year greeting army was too strange and eye-catching, attracting the attention of many people in Swallow Dock. A few people pointed at them, discussing something in low voices. Qin Tian clasped his hands at an old woman at the entrance of the alley and said, Sister, Happy New Year. Where's Teacher Fang Yan's house? This sister made the old woman very happy. She pointed at the fish pond in front of them and said, Go straight. You'll see that fish pond at the end. The one whose courtyard is directly facing the fish pond is the Fang family. Thank you, Sister, Qin Tian said gratefully. Luwan began to worry. What kind of person was this girl? Why did he bring so many helpers with him? Was she the daughter of a gangster? If she was a gangster, there was nothing to be afraid of. However, there was no trace of violence or hostility in her temperament and demeanor. It was obvious that she came from a rich family. Such a girl, Fang Yan, that silly boy, would be even less likely to marry her. Luwan sighed softly. It seemed that she had thought too much. Whenever he saw a beautiful girl, he couldn't help wanting her to be his daughter-in-law. How could it be so easy? Qin Tian took Luwan's hand and said, Auntie, you don't have to be so polite. Fang Yan is my teacher, and he has helped me a lot. I came to pay a New Year's visit to Mr. Fang, so of course I should bring him a gift. How can I not bring gifts for your uncle and auntie, if I bring gifts for your teacher? If others know, won't they say that I don't know etiquette? It's not appropriate. It's not appropriate. Luwan looked at the group of men in black walking past her, and said anxiously, even if Fang Yan really helped this girl in her studies, she couldn't accept such an expensive gift. Fang Yingying hung up Fang Yan's phone, and eagerly took the birdcage from Mu Ying's hand. Mu Ying looked at him with a smile, but didn't give him the gift. Fang Yingying didn't force him. He went to the back, and took a big wooden box from the hands of a man in black. Hearing the noise in the yard, Fang Yisin and his husband Fang Hao, Fang Yiling and her husband Zhao Qingxin, Fang Yijing and her husband Zhou Fan, Zhou Mingli, and a few children all ran out to see what was going on. Zhao Qingxin's Zhao family had a small business in Yanjing City. Seeing the row of men in black, he couldn't help but be surprised. He glanced at the men in black, but couldn't see which family they came from. Then he laughed at himself, thinking that no matter which family they came from, they must be the family that he had never been in contact with. Fang Hao looked at his wife in confusion. Fang Yisin shook his head, indicating that he also didn't know what was going on. Because of what happened last night, Zhou Fan didn't go out for the whole morning. He even hid in the room, and ate a bowl of dumplings for breakfast. Fang Yisin knew that her husband hadn't recovered from the nightmare, so she accompanied him in the room for the whole morning. Hearing the voices outside, she dragged her husband out to see what was going on. When Zhou Fan saw Qin Tian walking over hand in hand with Lu Wan, his first reaction was that she was beautiful. This girl was as beautiful as a fairy. His second reaction was the grandeur. Whose family's young lady was this? She brought along so many bodyguards, and prepared such heavy gifts on a single trip. Zhou Fan calculated in his mind by elimination. No one in the group he knew dared to compete with this girl in terms of grandeur. If Zhou Fan knew that Qin Tian didn't want to be too high profile, and had reduced the number of his guards by more than half, what would he think? After the incident in Huaqing, the Qin family attached great importance to Qin Tian's safety. The old master of the Qin family even wanted to assign his guards to his favorite granddaughter. But the Qin family refused. Qin Etienne's legendary mother had sent Eagle Mu to her daughter's side, so that he could protect her. This was also the reason why Qin Etienne had Mu Ying by his side after he came back from Huaqing. Mu Ying was now the captain of Qin Etienne's guards, who led the whole security team, and was responsible for Qin Etienne's safety. Who is he? Zhou Fan asked in a low voice. I don't know. Fang Yisan shook his head. I haven't seen him before. I think he is Fang Yan's student. Can you tell who this student is? Zhou Fan smiled bitterly and said, How can I tell? Go and ask around. Zhou Fan's heart was filled with emotion. When he first arrived, he didn't give a damn about the Fang family. He felt that his father-in-law's family in the suburbs of Yanjing had made him suffer a lot and humiliated him. He also looked down on Fang Yan. He felt that his nephew, who was a teacher in Huaqing, was too shabby. He even bragged that he would get him a new job. Now looking at the things he had done, and the people he had come into contact with, he had long left his uncle far behind. Take this student as an example. With the extravagance she displayed today, as long as she casually moved her lips, she would definitely be able to find a better job for Fang Yan. Moreover, such a beautiful student came to visit her teacher with such an expensive gift. Was there a deeper meaning behind it? Zhou Fan felt that he was really an idiot. He was the biggest idiot in the world. Zhou Mingli was shocked when he saw Qin Etienne. He didn't expect there to be such a beautiful girl. The so-called prettiest girl in the class that he had been sending messages to pursue couldn't be compared with the girl in front of him. He stared at Qin Etienne with wide eyes and a face full of infatuation. He wanted to greet her in a cool way, just like how he flirted with other girls at school. However, as soon as he had this idea, he began to become nervous. He was at a loss and his hair stood on end. It was as if he was not facing a peerless beauty, but a fierce monster. Moreover, Qin Etienne was walking towards him. The closer Qin Etienne got, the more intense his heart beat. Finally, dense beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Qin Etienne walked to Zhou Mingli and nodded to him like other juniors of the Fang family. Then she walked past him. Zhou Mingli didn't dare to look directly at Qin Etienne's eyes. At the moment when she nodded, he couldn't help blushing and hurriedly lowered his head. When Qin Etienne went far away, he was annoyed and felt that he was such a failure. After Qin Etienne entered the house, those men in black also stood at the door of the living room with gift boxes in their hands. Lu Wan looked at Qin Etienne and waited for his arrangement. She couldn't ask them to put away these gifts. Nor could she ask so many people to put down the gifts and leave. There had to be a rule, right? Qin Etienne smiled and took Lu Wan to the first man in black. He opened the golden brocade box held by him and looked at the gifts inside. He said, There is nothing special about this one. The red inkstone produced in Heishan has a strong ink color. The color hasn't faded after thousands of years. When it is ground, it has a strange fragrance. I know that you like calligraphy, so this stone is to add a touch of color to your masterpiece. Lu Wan was so shocked that her jaw almost fell to the ground. She said, It is said that this inkstone can only be formed after thousands of years. It is one of the most precious treasures in the world. It is rare in the world and hard to find. Lu Wan looked at the large inkstone lying in the brocade box and gasped. She said, Miss, this gift is really too precious. We can't accept it. Chapter 411. If people like Fang Hao and Zhao Qingxin didn't know the value of the inkstone, it was understandable. After all, the inkstone rarely appeared in the world. Many people had never even heard of it, let alone seen it with their own eyes. It was said that because when Yuka had obtained a piece of inkstone, the bamboos he drew were different from other people. They looked vivid and lifelike as if they were alive. Chao Buji wrote a poem for him, in which there were 2 lines. You can draw bamboo, you have a well-thought-out plan. This was also the origin of the idiom, have a well-thought-out plan, in later generations. Under the influence of her father, Lu Gong, Lu Wan was well-read. There was nothing she didn't know about astronomy, geography, classics, and history. If Qin Etienne hadn't pointed out the origin of this stone, she herself wouldn't have been able to see its strangeness. However, When Qin Etian pointed out that this stone came from the Black Mountain in the far west, and said its name, Lu Wan understood the true value of this stone. There was a strange saying, Black Heart Magic Stone can be seen, but Red Heart Inkstone is hard to find. The stone in the box was the Red Heart Inkstone, that the ancients said was the most difficult to find. The middle part of it was dark red like burning charcoal. One tael of black jade was worth 500 kilograms. So how much was such a big piece of black jade worth? Some things were so rare that it was difficult to measure their value with money. Because even if you had money, you might not be able to buy it. A treasured sword should be given to a hero, and a piece of black jade should be given to a master, Qin Etian said with a smile. When I go home, I'll ask my uncle to give me a painting. Qin Etian ignored Lu Wan's objection and opened the second box held by the man in black. He glanced at the thing inside and said, This is a phoenix coral from the East Sea. I have 2 pots at home, but it's a bit repetitive to place them, so I brought Auntie 1 pot. Qin Etian glanced at the living room, pointed to a square mahogany table in the corner, and said, Put it there. Etian, this isn't appropriate. It's really not appropriate. Lu Wan still wanted to stop him. Qin Etian opened the big box in the hands of the third man in black. There was a small silver bowl in the small bowl. There was a piece of black stuff in the small bowl. This was the ointment made from the shell of the black tortoise. It was cut into the size of a fingernail and placed in the silver bowl. After mixing it with warm water, it could be applied to the face before going to bed at night to keep youthful. Swallowing it could replenish qi, blood and spirit. Auntie, this is a gift specially prepared for you. You can try it later. If the effect is good, I'll cut more for you. Sure. The 3 Fong sisters sucked in a breath of cold air. This kind of thing was fatally attractive to women. Qin Etian opened the 4th huge box. Inside the box was a beautiful fish tank. 2 red fish were swimming in it. And there was a rootless plant that looked like a lotus leaf floating on the surface of the water. Qin Etian obviously liked this gift very much. He held Lu Wan's hand and introduced it. Auntie, there are 2 red dragons inside. I've raised them for a few years. They're not valuable, but I like this bunch of rootless white lotus the most. It's from the Changbai Heavenly Lake. Just like now, it floats on the surface of the water without roots. When it blooms white lotus, it can fill the whole house, even the whole yard with a refreshing fragrance. TSK. Many people couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Qin Etian still wanted to open the box below, but he was stopped by Lu Wan. Lu Wan looked at Qin Etian, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She said, Miss Etian, these gifts are too expensive, really too expensive. Every one of them is priceless. We really can't accept them. I know that you're grateful to Mr. Fong, and Fong Yin will also understand, but you must take these gifts back. In Lu Wan's view, these gifts brought by Qin Etian could be placed together as a treasure. Drawing a picture and throwing it out could cause a crazy treasure hunt in the outside world. No matter whose child she was, her parents would certainly not allow her to give these valuable collections to a teacher. Lu Wan even guessed that these gifts brought by this little girl were secretly moved out when her family was not around. At the end of the day, she was just a student. Qin Etian laughed and said, Auntie, these are all useful things. You can just use them as ordinary things. What graphite? It's just a little stronger in color. And that rootless white lotus is not as good as a pot of plum blossoms. Just take it as a story and don't take it to heart. Since I brought them out, Auntie, you must accept them no matter what. How can you take back the gifts that you've given out? But these gifts, Auntie, don't worry. Qin Etian comforted her with a smile. She took Lu Wan's hand and walked to another box, saying, Come and have a look at this box. Fong Yin lost several times in a row and lost all the money he had just won. He even took out his wallet and put some of his capital in it. Of course, the advantage of losing money was that Yiro no longer complained about his smelly feet and kicked him from time to time. Finally, he won another round. When he was waiting to receive the money, the cell phone in Fong Yan's pocket rang. Fong Yan apologized and put down the long cards in his hand. He took out his cell phone and found it was a call from Fong Yingying. Fong Yan answered the phone and asked, What's the matter? Junior Marshal Uncle, come back quickly. Your student has come to pay a New Year's visit. Fang Yingying said excitedly. Student, come to pay a New Year's visit. Fang Yan's first thought was that Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin had come, because among his students, only these two girls had been to Swallow Dock and knew his home address. However, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin had just returned to Huaqing before the New Year's Day, and their parents couldn't let them go to Yanjing on the first day of the new year. Besides, when he called them last night, they also said that they would return to Yanjing after the Lantern Festival. Which student would come to pay a New Year's visit to him? Junior Marshal Uncle, come back quickly. I'm busy, so I'll hang up. Fang Yingxiong shouted and hung up the phone. He dared to hang up on me. Fang Yan was infuriated. Do they still respect me as an elder? What's wrong? Something happened at home. Hearing the content of Fang Yan's call, the old ancestor put the long cards on the table and said, Go back if you have something to do. I'm also tired and need a rest. The poker field was like a battlefield, and escaping was a big crime. Fang Yan said with a guilty face. Old ancestor, do you want me to play a few more rounds with you? No need, no need. I want to play cards, and I'm not afraid of not being able to find a partner. Go back to your business, the old ancestor said. Fang Yan glanced at Yi Ro and said, It said that a student came to pay a New Year's visit. I'll go back and have a look. Yi Ro didn't respond, and just lowered her head to play with the long cards in her hand. After Fang Yan put on his shoes and left, the old ancestor looked at Yi Ro with a smile and said, You little girl, Fang Yan is a guest. How can you say that his feet are smelly? Why? You're unhappy because he won a few rounds? He's an idiot. Yi Ro said. He's not an idiot. He's a smart person. The old ancestor sighed softly and said, You think he keeps winning, so you're worried that I'll feel uncomfortable. But if he lets me keep winning, will I feel comfortable in my heart? Because I'm older, you guys always take care of me. You don't want to win. And the silly girl, pretended to play the wrong cards for me. Your father doesn't want to play cards with me. And your second and third uncles don't want to win. No one was willing to win against me. They just wanted me to win. At first I was happy, but after being coaxed by you for so many years, I feel that playing cards is meaningless. Fang Yan, that kid, didn't treat me as an outsider. When he first arrived, he tried his best to win. After he won, he lost all the money he won. He made me nervous for a while, but he also gave me a lot of face. Tell me, how can I not like him when he's so considerate towards me? Yi Ro was stunned for a long time, and then she scolded, He's a slippery guy. The old ancestor nodded with a smile and said, You're right this time. This guy is slippery, but I heard on the phone that a student came to visit him for the new year. What kind of student could come to our Swallow Dock? Chapter 412. A woman like Qin Yitian would be regarded as a goddess wherever she went. After Qin Yitian came, she became the center of the Fang family. Her every move and smile was the focus of everyone's attention. When Qin Yitian was in the living room, everyone stood in the living room to watch. Qin Yitian said that she was going to visit Fang Yan's grandfather. Everyone followed her to the backyard. Of course, the closest ones were Lu Wan, Fang Yan's 3 aunts, and several other female members of the Fang family. Fang Hao, Zhao Qingxin, and Zhou Fan were men, so they were embarrassed to get too close. Zhou Mingli didn't have such scruples. He stood at the door of the cottage with a tablet computer. All his thoughts were on Qin Yitian. He didn't need to say a word. He just looked at her quietly, which made people's hearts beat fast. He knew that he was in love. He decided that he would ask her name. He would write down her phone number. He would pursue her crazily. What should I do without you? Who will wipe my saliva? He thought that this idea had taken root in his heart and was indestructible. However, Qin Yitian's words made him heartbroken. Qin Yitian turned around naturally. Her smile seemed to light up the room, which was a little dim because of the gloomy weather. At least in Zhou Mingli's eyes, there was a hot sun rising in the room. His mouth was dry, and he couldn't look straight at her. I just want them all to like me, she said. If people still had some doubts about the relationship between Qin Yitian and Fang Yan before, The truth was revealed when Qin Etian said this. Everyone present looked at Fang Yan, and then at Qin Etian dumbfounded. What was the relationship between these two people? They had long felt that there was something wrong with these two people. What kind of students would empty their family's treasures just to visit their teacher? Just these things that she had sent over, even if they were used as betrothal gifts, would be enough to make a person's back bend over. What's more, this was just a New Year's gift. How big of a deal was this? Lu Wan had mixed feelings in her heart. She wanted to cry, laugh, love, and be angry. How did Fang Yan end up harming the little girl? Fang Yan's 3 aunts were also surprised, but they couldn't help but feel proud of their nephew Fang Yan. They were naturally elated that their nephew could be liked by such an outstanding girl. Fang Hao and Zhao Qingxin were naturally full of joy. If Fang Yan really got together with this girl, it would be very beneficial to the Fang family and them. Perhaps he could borrow the other party's strength in some way. Zhou Fan's heart once again experienced an intense turmoil. Why was he so blind that he couldn't see all the good things about this kid? If it weren't for the idiotic things he said and did at that time, he wouldn't be in such an embarrassing situation in the Fang family now. He said that he would find a job for Fang Yan. The gifts Fang Yan's student sent today would probably let Fang Yan live a life of luxury for the rest of his life. Zhou Mingli's eyes turned red. He was very angry and felt wronged. He was angry that the fairy-like girl didn't like him. He felt wronged because, how could cousin Fang Yan like his student? Did he have any morality? Did he have any sense of shame? Fang Hui was still confused until now. He was chatting with an old guy in the room. He said that a little girl was Fang Yan's student and wanted to visit him for New Year's. As an old man, he couldn't refuse the kindness of the younger generation. As a result, such a beautiful, lovely, and charming girl came in. Every part of her body made people feel comfortable. She said some auspicious words and sent him a priceless King Kong eagle. This kind of eagle lived in the cliffs of the northern frontier. It had a keen sense of smell and could fly thousands of miles. It was difficult to catch it unless it had been a professional eagle hunter for more than 10 years. When Fang Hui was young, he knew that the young chief had raised such a King Kong eagle. After his legs were paralyzed, he had never seen such a spiritual bird again. He didn't expect that he would get one today, just like how a handsome guy would want a sports car. As a martial artist, who wouldn't want such a battle eagle? It was also the first time he met Qin Etian, but he didn't expect the girl to be so bold. After a while he smiled and said, Fang Yan, it seems that you're not a good teacher. You're speechless, after being refuted by your own student. Fang Yan smiled bitterly and said, It's really a headache to meet such a student. Qin Etian quickly spoke up for Fang Yan. She smiled and said to Fang Hui, Grandpa, Mr. Fang is a good teacher. All the students in the school like him. Hundreds of people go to his lectures. Really? Fang Hui looked at Fang Yan and said, It seems that you not only inherited our Fang family's talent in martial arts, but also have a strong cultural gene. It's a good thing to be well-versed in both literature and martial arts. You need to keep it up. Lu Wan pulled Fang Yan's hand and signaled him to follow her to the yard. Fang Yan, who is this student of yours? She sent a lot of gifts. Although I don't know the value, just hearing the names made my hands tremble. I said we can't accept them, but she didn't want to take them back. What should we do with these things? Fang Yan thought for a while and said, Mom, don't worry. I'll talk to her. Okay, you talk to her. Lu Wan said, We don't accept undeserved rewards. No matter how precious these things are, we can't accept gifts from others. Talk to her and ask her to take these gifts back. Okay, Fang Yan said with a smile. Fang Yan went back to the room and said to Qin Etian, Let Grandpa rest for a while. Let's go out for a walk. Qin Etian said goodbye to Fang Hui obediently and said, Grandpa, I'll chat with you in a while. I like chatting with old people the most. Okay. Fang Hui laughed. Grandpa is waiting for you. There were also many people watching at the gate of the Fang family's yard. Fang Yan couldn't take Qin Etian out for a stroll. He had to take her to a remote place in the martial arts hall and said, Why are you here? I'm here to wish Mr. Fang a happy new year. Qin Etian said seriously. Isn't it natural for a student to wish a teacher a happy new year? That's true. But you don't need to bring such expensive gifts. My mother is such a gentle person, and your gifts scared her. I was also scared when I saw the King Kong eagle. These are all rare treasures, and you just casually took them out to give away? I didn't just casually take them out. Each gift was carefully selected by me in the storage room. Qin explained. I'm not giving them away, I'm giving them to my teacher. Fang Yin smiled bitterly and said, who would give such gifts to their teacher? My family. Qin pointed at her own face. Qin put her hands in the pockets of her down jacket, kicked the snow at her feet, and said, don't worry, I told my mother when I came. I said I wanted to visit my savior, and she asked me to bring a few gifts. These were approved by my mother. I didn't steal them from the storage room. Even if I wanted to steal, I wouldn't do it so openly. Muing is my mother's confidant, he won't keep my secret. Bring them back. Fang Yin advised. These gifts are too expensive. We can't afford it. Besides, as I told you that night, that matter is long over, and you have already repaid me. Now it is I who owes you, not the other way around. You really want me to bring them back? Yes. Then let's smash it, Qin said, waving her hand. Whichever one you want me to bring back, I'll smash it. Do you want to try? How can you do that? Because I have money, Qin said. What's wrong with rich people being willful? Qin smiled and looked at Fang Yin with his beautiful eyes and said, in fact, these gifts are also gifts from the Qin family. Thank you for saving my life. In addition, you may not know the value of the Rubik's Cube. When the product is on the market, it can bring us huge and amazing profits. It may be an unimaginable number. I'm just recommending her. Without your recommendation, I probably wouldn't be interested in letting her see my mother, right? Qin said with a chuckle. Sometimes things are so clever. Okay. Fang Yin nodded. I'll accept these gifts. I'm just keeping them for you for the time being. Qin didn't want to talk about this topic with Fang Yin, and said, Mr. Fang, I came all the way from Yinjing to visit you for the new year. Do you want me to stay in your house for a few days? You don't want to? Can't we have a meal together? If you're willing to stay for a few days, it's naturally not a problem. As long as you don't mind the shabby conditions here. Fang Yin said sincerely. It's just that we don't have that many rooms in our house. And you brought too many bodyguards. How about letting them go back first? I can assure you that you won't be in any danger in Swallow Dock. You agree? Qin said with a smile. I thought you would find a reason to refuse. It's not a big deal to begin with, Fang Yin said. It's naturally not a problem to eat at home. Fang Yin and Qin were chatting in the backyard when Fang Yingying sneakily walked over. Seeing that Fang Yin didn't say anything, he looked like he wanted to say something but stopped. Fang Yin couldn't stand it anymore and said, Fang Yingying, if you have something to say, just say it. Why are you sneaking around? Fang Yingying grinned, but his smile was very unnatural. He lowered his voice and said, Junior Marshal Uncle, Miss Yi came to visit. Chapter 413. Yi-Ro is here? Why is Yi-Ro here? Yi-Ro was a special case in Swallow Dock. She was aloof and independent. She had a close relationship with the old drunkard, but no one knew that she had a good relationship with anyone else. In the past, no one had ever heard of her paying a New Year's visit to anyone's family, nor had she paid a New Year's visit to the Fang family. She always went through the back door when she came to the Fang family. That way, she could take a shortcut to the courtyard where the old drunkard lived. Even in front of Fang Yan's grandfather, Fang Huwei, her attitude was quite cold. Because she was a woman of the Yi family, because of her temperament, and most importantly, because she was beautiful and violent, everyone understood her behavior. As time went by, there were even some people who appreciated her. They felt that she was in line with the poem, "There is a beauty in the north, peerless and isolated." Besides, the Yi family was prosperous, so it was not Yi-Ro's turn to socialize in public. She just needed to practice martial arts and be happy with her ancestor. Why is Yi-Ro here today? Fang Yin looked at Fang Yingying confusedly. Fang Yingying shook his head, indicating that he didn't know either. Slap! Fang Yin slapped Fang Yingying's head and scolded, You're here. Why can't you tell me? Why do you keep your voice down like a thief? Why can't you tell others about it? Fang Yingying looked aggrieved. He covered his head and said, Junior Marshal Uncle, I just don't want you to be in a difficult position. Slap. Fang Yin slapped him again and scolded even more fiercely. He said, What's so difficult about it? What's so difficult about it? No, no. Fang Yingying covered his head and ran away like a rat. Junior Marshal Uncle was so angry that he knew he must be in a difficult position. Fang Yin looked at Qini Tian and said with a smile, Yi Rou is my neighbor and my friend. Today is the first day of the spring festival. She came to visit. She's pretty, right? Qini Tian asked. She's all right. Fang Yin replied reservedly. She's the prettiest girl in our village. Everyone knew that the #1 beauty of Swallow Dock was Yi Rou. Phoenix was also very beautiful, but she did not belong to Swallow Fort. Are you the most handsome guy in your village? Qini Tian giggled and asked. Bai Xiu's loathsome face appeared in Fang Yan's mind at the mention of the word country bumpkin. Therefore, Fang Yan slapped Bai Xiu's face out of his mind and said, They said so, but I don't care about these false reputations. What kind of village flowers and grass are they? Is there any point in lining them up here and there? Qini Tian nodded in agreement and said, That makes sense. They say I'm the prettiest girl in Rosefinch High. I don't care about this kind of thing. What class belle and campus belle? It's not like you can make a living out of comparing. After that, they looked at each other and couldn't help laughing. Fang Yin had always felt that Qini Tian had a maturity that didn't match her age. Fang Yin also felt that Qini Tian, and he had an indescribable spiritual tacit understanding. This girl was really an angel who fell to the earth. When Fang Yin took Qini Tian back to the house, Yi Rou was sitting in the living room with Fang Yan's mother, Lu Wan, and Fang Yan's aunts, drinking tea. Yi Rou was still wearing the festive cloth button gown and black cotton skirt. She didn't touch the teacup in front of her, and just answered the questions of Lu Wan and Fang Yan's 3 aunts politely. Lu Wan asked a question, and Yi Rou answered one by one. Lu Wan didn't speak, and Yi Rou didn't take the initiative to find a topic. She was calm, patient, and didn't fight. She looked like a cultivator, who had cultivated for thousands of years. Lu Wan's language skills were excellent, but she couldn't stand Yi Rou's temper. She asked a lot of questions, and Yi Rou answered them in 2 or 3 words. For example, she said that the last time she saw the ancestor was in the summer, and she took she for a walk in the village. She hadn't seen the ancestor for a long time. How was she? The weather was cold, and she had to take care of herself. Yi Rou's answer was only 2 words, she was fine. Another example, Fang Yan's aunt said that when Rou's dress was really beautiful. The golden stitches were fine, and the embroidered phoenix was like a real one. This dress must have been sewn by Sister Wen. The sister Wen she mentioned was Wen Xingya, Yi Rou's mother. Yi Rou's answer was still 2 words, yes. When Lu Wan and the 3 sisters of the Fang family were at their wits' end, Fang Yin finally entered the house. Lu Wan waved to Fang Yin and said, Fang Yin, Wen Rou is here. You young people should have a good talk. Then she looked at Qini Tian and said with a smile, Yi Tian, since you are here, have fun in our Swallow Dock for a few days. You sit here for a while. I'll go to the kitchen and prepare lunch. Thank you, aunts. Qini Tian said sweetly. This girl had a very high IQ. Once she made up her mind to do something, there was no possibility of failure. For example, she made up her mind to win the favor of everyone in the Fang family. I'll go to the kitchen too. Fang Yisan, the eldest aunt, said. I'll go to find Minjing and the baby elephant. I don't know where these 2 children are. Fang Yiling, the second aunt, also stood up and left. I'll go to see where numerology is. Fang Yijing, the third aunt, also ran away. Thus, only Fang Yin, Qini Tian, and Yi Rou were left in the big living room. Yi Rou sat on the sofa. She didn't drink tea, didn't speak, and didn't even look at Fang Yin and Qini Tian. Qini Tian stood in the courtyard with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. There was an inexplicable smile on his face, and he looked at Yi Rou thoughtfully. Fang Yin opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. Fang Yin felt that Fang Yingying was really a wise man sometimes. What he said really came true. It was really difficult for him to be stuck in the middle. However, it was not a solution to always be in such a stalemate. Therefore, Fang Yin turned to look at Qin Tian and said, "Do you want some tea?" "Okay." Qin Tian nodded. "I'll go and pour some tea for you," Fang Yin said. He turned around and ran out of the door. He felt that he needed to go to the yard and take a deep breath of fresh air. It was so exciting. After Fang Yin left, there were only Qin Tian and Yi Ro in the room. Qin Tian was still looking at Yi Ro with a smile, and Yi Ro finally raised her head and glanced at Qin Tian. Qin Tian walked towards Yi Ro and sat down on the mahogany sofa in front of her. He was dignified and elegant, and had the same strong aura. Qin Tian looked at Yi Ro and asked with concern, "Sister, are you feeling better?" "I'm fine," Yi Ro answered expressionlessly. "That's good. When I saw you last time, I was worried that there would be sequelae in your body. We are all women, and our bodies are weaker than men. Sister, you must take care of yourself." "Not necessarily," Yi Ro said. "What not necessarily? A woman's body is not necessarily weaker than a man's," Yi Ro said. "Could it be that your body is better than Teacher Fang's? I've seen Mr. Fang's kung fu is very good." "Indeed better," Yi Ro said. "Sister, you're so awesome. Mr. Fang is already so powerful, but he still can't beat you," Qin Tian praised. "Sister, you must be the number one in Swallow Dock, right?" Yi Ro stared at Qin Tian with vigilance. This girl set a trap with just a few words. She wanted to lead me into the ditch. If she said that she was the number one in Swallow Dock, then where was Fang Yin? If she wasn't the number one in Swallow Dock, then wasn't it a lie when he said that a woman's body was not necessarily weaker than a man's? Yi Ro picked up the teacup in front of her and took a sip of fragrant tea. She didn't answer Qin Tian's question, but said softly, "Our Swallow Dock rarely has outsiders come in." The subtext was that those who came in were all outsiders. "I'm not an outsider. I'm Mr. Fang's friend," Qin Tian said with a smile. "Besides, Swallow Dock belongs to Huaxia. Huaxia's people can all come in." Yi Ro ignored Qin Tian's counterattack and said lightly, "We guard Huaxia's Swallow Dock, and we are also Huaxia's Swallow Dock. Swallow Dock is one with us. For us, those who don't belong to Swallow Dock are outsiders. Just like those who don't have the surname Qin, it's difficult to become a member of the Qin family." Qin Tian nodded and said, "The general gets off the horse, and the prime minister gets off the sedan chair. The people of Swallow Dock are indeed qualified to say this. But not everyone is qualified to be a member of Swallow Dock." Qin Tian crossed his hands and rubbed them gently, saying, "But if there is such a person who is qualified, that person must be me. Because I cherish your glory, admire your sacrifice, recognize your value, and I'm willing to go through thick and thin with you. Swallow Dock is Huaxia's Swallow Dock. Every person of Huaxia can do their part for Swallow Dock. Do you still not qualified to be a member of Swallow Dock by doing this?" Qin Tian smiled and said, "I've only heard that people of Swallow Dock are brave in killing enemies, but I've never heard that people of Swallow Dock are heartless to their friends. Am I right, sister? If you come, Swallow Dock will naturally welcome you. Does sister welcome me?" Yi Ro was stunned. She didn't expect that he would pursue this question. She said with slight annoyance, "I won't tell you." In terms of language expression, she was indeed not as good as Qin Tian, who had hidden tricks and traps in every sentence. If you were not careful, you would be trapped in them and unable to move. However, she also knew very well that this excessively beautiful girl in front of her couldn't fight with her one-on-one. Otherwise, she had 10,000 ways to make her black and blue. Yi Ro thought that she still liked Fang Yin, because when she was unhappy, she could beat him up. Chapter 414. If Yi Ro was a white peony, then Qin Tian was a red rose. Yi Ro's temperament was soft but firm. She looked white and quiet, aloof from worldly affairs. However, her appearance was magnificent, luxurious, and luxurious. She had the reputation of being a national beauty, the queen of flowers. There was a poem that said, "Wealth and romance are the best, and all flowers bow their heads to the fragrant dust." The peony didn't compete, but no flower could compete with it. Qin Tian didn't hide or hide. She was as passionate as fire and charming as water. Whether it was a cliff, a mountain of knives or a sea of fire, she would rush over with her eyes closed. She brought others a beautiful illusion of love by burning herself resolutely. The branches and leaves had sharp thorns, and if one was not careful, he would be stabbed by her. Now the white peony and the red rose gathered together, competing to bloom. That kind of beauty was dazzling. Unfortunately, there was no audience in the living room. Even Zhou Mingli, who fell in love with Qin Etian at first sight, was completely desperate after knowing that she liked Fang Yan. He ran to the stone river to enjoy the cool wind and pretend to be depressed. It was not the first time that they met, but it was the first time that they had a conflict. In other words, it was the first time that they communicated with each other as enemies. When Yi Rou said, "I won't tell you," Qin Etian couldn't help but be a little surprised. She never thought that the tough woman who treated Fang Yan as a mortal enemy at school would have such a girlish side. If those guys who liked violence and regarded her as an idol and wanted to be whipped by her every day saw this scene, their eyeballs would probably fall to the ground. However, Qin Etian didn't feel contradictory at all. She was such a person. When she wanted to beat you, she would beat you. When she didn't want to tell you, she wouldn't tell you. In a sense, she was braver than herself, more direct than herself, and more willful than herself. Facing such an opponent, Qin Etian had a feeling of palpitation. Qin Etian was not afraid of any opponent. But in the field of love, she only hoped that they were unique to each other. Because if you cared too much, you would be afraid of failure. Even if the possibility was minuscule, they would still worry about it. Qin Etian looked straight into Yi Rou's eyes and said, "Don't say it if you don't want to. I already know the answer." Yi Rou knew what the answer was. Both of them were smart people, so there was no need to be too straightforward. That would only make the relationship between them more awkward. They shouldn't be enemies. Yi Rou thought Qin Etian was the prettiest girl she had ever seen. She even thought she was more beautiful than herself. Her facial features were exquisite and dazzling, like the blazing sun, like the bright moon, like the brightest star among the stars. She sparkled in the crowd. Qin Etian also felt that Yi Rou had an aura that was ethereal and pure. Clean, pure, and approachable. If it was said that his aura would make people feel oppressed and retreat 3 feet away, then Yi Rou's aura would make people feel pity and respect that they couldn't bear to disturb her. They should appreciate each other and become best friends. How could they be enemies? Thinking of this, both of them couldn't help but be fascinated. The room was very quiet, but the atmosphere didn't make people feel awkward. 2 extremely beautiful girls sat there without saying a word, but it didn't make people feel strange, as if it should be so. Fang Yan, who had been out for a long time, finally came back with a cup of hot tea. He put the cup in front of Qin Etian and said, "Be careful, it's hot." Seeing that the tea in front of Yi Rou was cold, he picked up the cup and said, "I'll get you a cup of hot tea." Yi Rou glanced at Fang Yan and said, "If you don't want to sit here, come in when it's time to eat." Qin Etian giggled and said, "Mr. Fang, are you afraid that I will fight with Sister Yi? I can't beat her." "No. How could it be?" Fang Yan wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, "I just went to the kitchen to have a look. I'm afraid that the food they make is too greasy. I know you guys don't like to eat greasy food." "I like to eat meat," Yi Rou said. "The ambush you made last time in the back mountain was very good. I also like to eat meat." Qin Etian said, "Did you forget? In Huacheng, we went to eat at Zhang Yuan restaurant. The T-bone steak there is very good." Haha. Fang Yan's smile was uglier than a crying face. "I like to eat meat too. So when I was very young, I followed my friends in the village to catch sparrows, rabbits, and grasshoppers. Then, I cooked the ingredients myself. Etian hasn't eaten it yet. I'll take you there when I have the chance." Yi Rou looked at Qin Etian and said, "The friends Fang Yan mentioned are Yi Fengxing, Zhu Xiaodan, and Li Xiaodian. They even formed a group called Swallow Fort's Pretty Men Team. Isn't it funny?" "It's really funny. So he was this childish when he was young? There are things that are even more childish. Every year when we compete, he would hug my leg and beg for mercy when he couldn't beat me, crying and yelling for me not to hit his face." "No way? Mr. Fong has such a shameless side, but I've known him for a long time, and I know his character quite well. There are also some things you don't know. I'll get to know him later. He lived in Swallow Fort for more than 20 years. We can't change the length of life, but we can determine the width of life. I always think the width of life is more abundant. Practicing martial arts requires constant dripping to wear through a stone. Tai Chi requires instant enlightenment. Fong Yin suddenly found a serious problem. He only cared about pouring tea for Qin Etian and changing tea for Yi Rou. He forgot that he hadn't drunk hot tea yet. No wonder he felt sweaty and thirsty. It turned out that he hadn't drunk water for a long time. Fong Ying. Fong Yin turned around and shouted toward the backyard. No one answered. Fong Haohan. Still no one answered. Fong Yin shook his head helplessly, as if he was talking to himself or explaining to Qin Etian and Yi Rou. I don't know where these two guys are. They don't know how to entertain the guests, and they can't find anyone to drink a cup of tea. I'll go pour a cup of tea. So Fong Yin got up and ran outside. He really couldn't stand it anymore. He sat in front of the two women and felt out of breath. These two people were talking about something irrelevant. But why did he feel that there was a hidden killing intent in every word? Moreover, he was the chicken that was being coveted by the killing intent. If you're like this, you might as well fight to your heart's content. Muing was standing in the yard enjoying the plum blossoms. Seeing Fong Yin running out, he said with a smile, "It's not easy to deal with this kind of situation, is it?" "Yes." Fong Yin sighed softly. "I'm not afraid that you'll laugh at me. I'm a shy person, and I've never been in love before. I really have no experience in dealing with girls." "That's a pity." Muing reached out his hand to catch a snowflake. His handsome face was absorbed in watching the fluff-like snowflake melting in his palm. "Miss is not an easy person to deal with." Fong Yin looked at Muing curiously and asked, "How do you usually deal with her?" "Deal with her?" Muing shook his head. "I've never been able to deal with Mississippi. I do whatever she says." Fong Yin really envied Qin Etian. It was such a happy thing to have such a brainless fan. Fong Yin looked for Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan all over the yard. He felt that he needed them very much. Yi Rou, Qin Etian, Fong Yingying, and Fong Haohan all knew them. Moreover, these two idiots were the spies that Yi Rou had arranged around him. Perhaps she didn't need to arrange them. They were born to be rebellious. If they could sit in the living room with him, they could talk about their daily lives, talk about the past, and make jokes. Time would pass quickly. The two women wouldn't stab him in the dark, and he wouldn't feel like sitting on pins and needles. However, Fong Yin looked all over the yard and didn't see Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan. They seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Those two bastards. Fong Yin gnashed his teeth and cursed. Beside Stone River, it was a good place near the call, facing the wind and the sun. Two figures, one fat and one thin, were tightly huddled together, looking at the fire in front of them expectantly. "How well is it?" Fong Yingying smelled the fragrance in the air and asked. Fong Haohan sniffed hard and said, "It's well done. Open the pot." Fong Yingying shouted. Then he grabbed at the open fire above the fire, with both hands like an iron rake. Fong Haohan didn't want to be outdone. He used a small iron piece to fly up and down, and the red-hot firewood was pushed aside by him. Under the fire, there were several big black sweet potatoes. The sweet potatoes were covered with dust and didn't look good, but the fragrance they emitted made people swallow their saliva uncontrollably. "Brother Hero, you first." Fong Yingying modestly and politely made a gesture of invitation. "Brother Hero, you first." Fong Yingying was also very polite and gave way to the older one. Then, the two reached out to grab the biggest sweet potato at the same time. "Haha, the hero chooses first." Fong Yingying grabbed the sweet potato and said, "Brother Hero, you choose first." Fong Haohan also grabbed the sweet potato and said, "You let me choose first. Let go first. You can choose anything except this. Is this still called me choosing first? You didn't let me choose first. Do you want to fight?" The fat on Fong Yingying's face shook again. "Fight after you're full," Fong Yingying suggested. Fong Yingying felt that what Fong Haohan said made sense, so the big sweet potato was divided into half by them. They greedily ate the roasted sweet potatoes in their hands, feeling that there was nothing more blissful than this. Brother Hero, what do you think Junior Marshall Uncle is doing now? Fang Yingying asked curiously. He's looking for us. Fang Yingying took a bite of the sweet potato. It was so hot that his tongue rolled around in his mouth. He's definitely looking for us to go in and flirt. Does he think we're stupid? We're not going in. Brother Hero, if you were Junior Marshall Uncle, who would you choose? Fang Haohan asked. Fang Yingying raised his dirty fat face and thought seriously for a while. He slapped Fang Haohan's head and said angrily, "Don't ask me such difficult questions when we're eating." Chapter 4:15. Fang Haohan was slapped on the head and said with grievance, "Since we have nothing to do, let's discuss it." Fang Yingxiong took a bite of the sweet potato and chewed it in his mouth. His face was full of sadness as he said, "How can I choose? Miss Yi is beautiful. Miss Qin is also beautiful. Miss Ye's martial arts are good. Miss Qin's background is great. Miss Yi is very good to me. Miss Qin is also very good to me. Which should I choose? Which can I choose? If I choose gentle, what about heaven reliance? If I choose heaven reliance, what about gentle? No matter which one of these girls I let down, it would be an unforgivable sin. God will send me to hell." That's true. Fang Haohan nodded in agreement. If I were Junior Marshall Uncle, I wouldn't know who to choose either. Every one of them is so outstanding. Every one of them is so affectionate. Junior Marshall Uncle isn't that good either. Why would they choose Junior Marshall Uncle? That's right. Fang Yingxiong agreed. He's handsome, but everyone says Fatso looks lucky. Skinny looks like he's lucky too, Fang Haohan added. Yes, Fatso and Skinny both look lucky. Fang Yingying couldn't help but bring Fang Haohan along. At least they were on the same side on this issue. And we look safe. Which girl follows us? TSK, we definitely won't have to worry about cheating. Even if she has a beautiful girlfriend, we won't even look at them. Junior Marshall Uncle is funny. We aren't worse than him. Everyone laughed at the joke I told last time. Then what's the difference? Fang Yingying asked doubtfully. Is it because our luck is especially bad? Yes. It must be bad luck. Fang Haohan said. Also, we can't always stand with Junior Marshall Uncle. Why? It's not that I'm worried that others will think that he's the red flower and we're the green leaf. The key is that we're one generation younger than him. Think about it. If a girl who likes us hears that we're going to call him Junior Marshall Uncle, won't she be scared away? Yes. Fang Haohan nodded repeatedly. That's what I said. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin had praised us for being cute. But why are you so close to Junior Marshall Uncle? It's because they know that if they follow us, they have to call Junior Marshall Uncle Uncle. If they grow up and marry Junior Marshall Uncle, we have to call them Master's wife. Who wouldn't want such a big advantage? But we also have our own style. Fang Yingying tore off a piece of sweet potato skin and said, "When Junior Marshall Uncle is now in a terrible mess like a headless fly, we're eating roasted sweet potatoes with relish. This kind of life, I wouldn't exchange it even for a fairy." Yes, I wouldn't exchange it even for a fairy. Fang Haohan echoed. If it's a fairy sister, I'd exchange it. Junior Marshall Uncle is so pitiful. Fang Yingying sighed and said. Yes, Junior Marshall Uncle is so pitiful. Fang Haohan took a bite of the sweet potato and said bitterly, I really want to bear this unbearable suffering for Junior Marshall Uncle. Sigh. Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan suddenly lost interest in talking, but the sweet potato in their hands was still sweet and delicious. When lunch was ready, the Fangs had to eat at the table. Qini Tian and Yi Ro sat together. Fang Yin sat next to Yi Ro, and Lu Wan sat next to Qini Tian. Fang Huwei sat at the main table, and Fang Yan's 3 aunts and 3 uncles sat on both sides of the table. Zhou Mingli stole a bottle of Shadozi to celebrate his breakup again, but he got drunk halfway and was carried back by Zhou Fan. Fang Huwei looked at Qini Tian, then looked at Yi Ro, and said with a smile, Eat. Just treat it as your own home. Lu Wan helped Qini Tian and Yi Ro get some food, and said, You two eat more. You're too thin. Qini Tian rushed to help Lu Wan serve soup, and said, It's cold, Auntie. You should drink more soup to warm your stomach. She was going to ladle soup for the three sisters of the Fong family. How could the three of them dare to let this young miss do it? Her extravagance, and the gifts she had sent today had really shocked them. They didn't know what was going on, but they felt that this girl was too ostentatious, but they were very happy. Every one of them was of the highest quality, and they had never heard of such treasures. Who would dislike gifts that were too expensive? Fong Yijing especially admired her sister-in-law's determination. Zhou Fan was a small leader in the unit, and when her subordinates sent some bags, branded watches and so on to her home, she would throw them back mercilessly. But if those subordinates also sent gifts like this young lady of the Qin family, such as a piece of red inkstone, a basin of phoenix coral, and a big bowl of black turtle ointment, who wouldn't want to challenge their own weakness like this? Fong Yixing had to drink with guests at the Li family's house at noon, so he didn't come back for lunch. The three aunts of the Fangs didn't say anything, and the three uncles of the Fangs didn't know what to say. Even Lu Wan only talked about some interesting stories about Swallow Dock and Fong Yan under Qin Etienne's lead. It had to be said that this was the dullest lunch that Fong Yan had ever had since he came back home. Fong Hui was the first to put down his bowl and chopsticks, saying that he was full. Fong Yijing hurriedly pushed the old man back to the backyard, and then he was unwilling to go to the table again. The others didn't have such good luck. The guests hadn't left, and they couldn't just leave their bowls and leave, so they could only eat unhurriedly. When others talked, they listened. When others joked, they also laughed for a while. Qin Etienne and Yi Rou put down their bowls and chopsticks, and the others felt relieved as if a big stone had been lifted from their hearts. These two young girls actually had such power, pressuring others to the point that they couldn't breathe. Lu Wan asked someone to clean up the bowls and chopsticks, and said, "You young people can sit and drink tea and chat. I'll go to rest for a while. I have the habit of taking a nap." Soon, Fong Yan found that only he, Yi Rou, and Qin Etienne were left in the living room. Fong Yan thought for a while and said, "Let me go out with you." Yi Rou went straight to the outside and said, "I'm going home." Qin Etienne looked at Fong Yan and said with a smile, "Although I really want to stay for a few days, I have to go back." Fong Yan knew that Qin Etienne couldn't really stay. If she dared to stay in his house, the Qin family would be in chaos. Fong Yan nodded and said, "I'll see you off." Fong Yan walked Qin Etienne to the parking place of the training hall. Qin Etienne stood still and turned to look at Fong Yan, saying, "Mr. Fong, when will we meet next time?" "I'll go back to Huaqing after the Spring Festival," Fong Yan said. "Since you're a teacher there, you should do your job well. You must finish what you started." Qin Etienne nodded and said, "I can't go to Huaqing. I'll accept the new position my mother arranged for me on the 8th. But wherever you are, my eyes will be there." Fong Yan smiled bitterly and said, "Take care of yourself and be careful." Qin Etienne pointed at Mu Ying and said, "I'll take care of myself. My safety is their job." Fong Yan looked at Mu Ying, who shrugged his shoulders and said, "Don't worry. As long as I'm alive, she will be alive. If I die, I won't care so much." "Thank you," Fong Yan said sincerely. "What are you thanking me for?" "This is my job," Mu Ying said. Qin Etienne walked to Fong Yan, and Fong Yan took the initiative to open his arms. Qin Etienne smiled and threw herself into Fong Yan's arms. She hugged Fong Yan's waist tightly and said, "I have a scar on my chest. The doctor said I can remove it with lasers or golden chrysalis muscle nourishing powder. I said I should keep it. It's a witness." "Witness what?" "That I have the courage to risk my life for another person." Qin Etienne left with her luxury motorcade. Fong Yan stood there for a long time. When Fong Yan returned home, Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan finally showed up. Fong Yan grabbed Fong Yingying and asked angrily, "Where have you been?" Hero was in a bad mood. "I went out with him," Fong Yingying said with a sad face. "His Xiaobai. What's wrong with Xiaobai?" Fong Yan asked anxiously. Xiaobai was Fong Haohan's rabbit. The rabbit was his lover, his lifeblood. Usually, Fong Yingying wouldn't even let him touch it. If something happened to Xiaobai, it would be a heavy blow to Fong Haohan. "I haven't eaten for 2 days," Fong Yingying said in pain. Fong Yingying reached out to slap Fong Yingying's head. Fong Yingying quickly dodged and said, "Grandpa wants you to see him. Remember it." Fang Yin came to Feng Hui's cabin. The old man was sitting in front of the window, playing with the King Kong eagle in the cage. The King Kong eagle was majestic and beautiful, but it didn't want to open its mouth to cry. It looked very noble and cold. Fang Yin said with a smile, "Why did you accept such an expensive gift?" "It's a gift from a girl, I can't hurt her, can I? This girl is really a villain. You know you can't accept her gift, but you don't want to return it," Feng Hui said confidently. "Tell me, what's going on today?" "I don't know either," Fang Yin said helplessly. Qin Yitian came to visit. Yiro also came to visit, so they bumped into each other. My mom said everyone should stay for lunch, and then everyone sat together for lunch. Feng Hui grinned and said, "I used to worry that you were a football, and everyone wanted to kick you away. Now it seems that you're a basketball, and everyone wants to throw you into the basket. It's good to compete, it's good to compete." Feng Hui's eyes became stern and said, "But you have to deal with this matter properly. You can't hurt the girls. Our Feng family has been guarding the family and protecting the country, and we've never done anything wrong to others." "I understand." Feng Yin bowed in acknowledgement. Chapter 416. Dear passengers, Flight YY60225 from Huaqing to Yanjing is about to arrive at Yanjing Airport. Perhaps it was because of the Spring Festival, but the number of seats on the plane wasn't ideal. There weren't many passengers, so the plane seemed a bit empty. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the first-class seats in the front cabin, and many people were still whispering to each other. It seemed that something interesting was happening. Chiba Hirobumi, who was wearing a wide-sleeved white robe, and Chiba Haomu, who was also dressed with a white ribbon tied around his head, were indeed very eye-catching. The father and son were dressed differently from ordinary people, and they were silent. Ever since they got on the plane, they had closed their eyes to rest, and even refused the meals and drinks provided by the flight attendants. The plane began to glide on the ground, like a silver monster charging toward the castle in front of it. Chiba Hirobumi sighed softly and said, "This is Yanjing City. This is Yanjing City." Chiba Haomu also opened his eyes wide and looked at the familiar yet strange city seriously. It had wonderful stories on TV, and there were all kinds of legends and novels. He was very familiar with this city that was becoming more and more influential internationally. But this was his first time setting foot on this magical land. "It's also my first time here," Chiba Hirobumi said with emotion. 20 years ago, when I wanted to come, that man went to Japan first. After the battle at Hachibana Mountain, my confidence dropped to an unprecedented freezing point. I suddenly realized that the light that I was proud of and worked hard to shine in the world was so dim and insignificant. Have you seen fireflies? They also know that they can shine, and they think that they will shine brightly. But in the end, they are just fireflies. Qinya Hao looked at his father in shock. He had never told him about that battle before. Even when he took the initiative to ask, he only said a few words. Today he took the initiative to talk about it and analyze his feelings at the time. Why was this? Just because he was going to meet his old friend again? "Father, you didn't lose either," Chiba Haomu said. "No. I lost. I lost. He single-handedly overturned the Dongyang Peninsula," said Chiba. "That in itself is already better than us. Everyone had pinned their hopes on me, but I didn't have the power to keep it, so he won. They won with vigor and confidence." The Japanese men were speechless, and everyone was ashamed to talk about this person and this matter. This was also the reason why that person's matter was not known in Japan. Every time someone worships me and respectfully calls me the Japanese sword god, I feel guilty and uneasy. Then he put more effort into comprehending swordsmanship and climbing the path of martial arts. Because I'm afraid to see their eyes. They think you're an omnipotent god. I've been comprehending the sword for 20 years. The number of swords I can use in my heart has increased, and the number of swords I can see in my eyes has decreased. Finally, I've reached the state of being one with the sword. When I once again set foot on Huaxia's land, filled with confidence, when I wanted to challenge Huaxia's hero, using the same method that he had used before. When I wanted to win boldly and vigorously, I didn't expect to meet such an opponent. At the mention of Fang Yan, Chiba Haomu was burning with anger. His face was pale, and he said fiercely, "Does that kind of person deserve to be father's opponent? He won by cheating. It doesn't count." Ridiculous. Chiba Haomu's tone was unprecedentedly stern. A win is a win, a loss is a loss. How is cheating? What is cheating? The path of swordsmanship focuses on change and impermanence. If you don't even understand this, when can you understand the great way? I know you're hostile to Fang Yan, but if you have a wrong understanding of a person because of this hostility, then, whether it's in the past or in the future, the person who will lose will be you. Fang Yan risked his life to accept my challenge, stood in front of me, and fought me bravely and fearlessly. How many people in Japan can do such a young talent? I know what's bothering you. You think that he used some unusual means in the process of the duel. So I lost this duel unjustly. He even threw a bomb, Chiba Haomu said with dissatisfaction. In my eyes, what's the difference between a bomb and a rock? Chiba Haomu asked in return. It's a test of a person's physical fitness and reflexes. My reaction was wrong, so he took advantage of it. That's just a tactic. Compared to that, the longsword in my hand is even more intimidating. What if Fang Yan also feels wronged? He's bare-handed, while I have a divine weapon. Isn't that unfair to him? Father is good at using swords. How can the god of swords not use a sword? The sword in my hand and the bomb Fang Yan used are just auxiliary weapons, Chiba Haomu said. Fang Yan must not have thought that he could kill me with just that bomb. But I have thought that the sword in my hand can cut off his limbs, split his flesh, and cut off his head. Compared to the bomb, the sword in my hand is more terrifying. Chiba Haomu nodded seriously and said, "Father, I understand." It's good that you understand. Chiba Haomu looked at his son with gentle eyes. You still have a long way to go, so you must be open-minded. The bigger your heart, the greater your achievements. Yes, father. Chiba Haomu bowed. Chiba Haomu sighed softly and said, "What a pity." What's a pity, father? 3 dragons and 7 tigers guarding the peace of Huaxia. Chiba Haomu said with a face full of regret. I only know one of them, and the others are not fated to fight. What a pity. 3 dragons and 7 tigers? They're just flattering themselves, aren't they? Don't underestimate your enemy, White Azure Dragon. Is there something wrong with this name? Chiba Haomu said with a smile. If that's the case, what is your father? Chiba Haomu only now knew that the person who fought against his father was one of the 3 dragons of Huaxia, Azure Dragon. If that was the case, he really couldn't belittle this person anymore. If that was the case, what was his father? Father, you can fight with them when you come to the capital this time, Chiba Haomu advised. Chiba Haomu chuckled and said, I hope it's not too late. It's definitely not too late, Chiba Haomu said firmly. He thought that no matter what, he would let his father fight with the 3 dragons and 7 tigers of Huaxia. For a swordsman who valued martial arts as much as his life, it would be a lifelong regret if he couldn't fight with the world's top masters. The plane stopped, and the father and son got off the plane first under the guidance of the stewardess. Walking out of the airport gate, Chiba Haomu took a breath of the cold air outside and raised his eyebrows slightly. Father, what happened? The air is too dirty, Chiba Haomu said. They didn't have to wait for long before a black car with a red flag slowly stopped in front of them. Fang Yan rolled down the window and said with a smile, Hurry up and get in the car. No parking here. Thus Chiba Haomu and Chiba Haomu opened the door and got in. Chiba Haomu was still hostile to Fang Yan, so he didn't want to talk to Fang Yan. Chiba Haomu, on the other hand, looked calm as if he didn't care about anything. Thank you, Chiba Haomu said gratefully. You're welcome, Fang Yan said. I'm not a busybody. This is what I owe you. You're a man who keeps his promise. This is the glorious virtue of our Huaxia people, Fang Yan said with a smile. That's what everyone says. Fang Yan didn't intend to take Chiba Haomu to Yanjing City. After getting off the airport highway, he drove straight in the direction of Swallow Dock. The snow on the road gradually melted, and only puddles of black water splashed by the car's tires. The wheat fields on both sides of the road also showed green shoots, weakly enduring the cold wind. "Please stop by the side of the road," Chiba Hamu said. "Screech." Fang Yin stopped the car nimbly and asked, "Did you miss anything?" "No," Chiba Hamu said. Chiba Hamu opened the door and got out of the car, then walked to the middle of the wheat field. He walked very carefully, trying to avoid stepping on any green shoots. He took off his shoes and stepped on the ice and snow barefoot, as if he was on a pilgrimage, seriously feeling the coldness and fertility of the land. The cold wind messed up his black hair and fluttered the corners of his clothes, but he closed his eyes comfortably. Fang Yin and Chiba Hamu stood by the side of the road, looking at his devotion to the land, and respected him even more. Chiba Hamu walked back barefoot. Chiba Hamu wanted to help him carry his shoes, but Chiba Hamu said, "No need. From now on, I'll be barefooted." He pulled a handkerchief from his arms and carefully wiped the mud off his feet, then opened the door and got into Fang Yan's car. Seeing Fang Yin looking at him with a puzzled look, Chiba Hamu said with a smile, "Each place nurtures its own people. Japan was an island country with strong winds and waves and frequent earthquakes. Therefore, everyone had a natural fear of nature. Their feet are unstable, and even the hand holding the sword has to be a little light. I've always wanted to experience stepping on the black soil with both feet, entrusting all my strength to the land under my feet. You don't have to worry about it being bumpy, and you don't have to worry about it hurting you. You're one with the earth, and this warm and peaceful feeling is really intoxicating. Huaxia is a place with great people. Only when the land has spirituality can a large number of heroes emerge." Chiba Hamu looked at the vast land outside and said enviously, "Huaxia people are blessed." Chapter 417. You've paid attention to the skyscrapers. You've admired the vast sea. You've admired the long river and the sunset. You've said that the green trees and red flowers are the surprise of life. You've even seen a flying insect or a snowflake. But have you ever paid attention to the land under your feet? Because it was too ordinary, it was easy to be ignored. It had been silent for millions of years and raised billions of people. That was its great power. Fang Yin was ashamed. If it weren't for the attitude of the Thousand Leaves Army, if it weren't for the love and respect he showed for this land, he would have been indifferent to the land, just like many other people. He didn't get close to it, didn't look at it carefully, and didn't release his emotions. It was like it was supposed to exist. Without experiencing strong winds and waves, without encountering earthquakes and tsunamis, without feeling the separation of life and death, and without being in a foreign country, how could he understand the true meaning of the land? The sky was the sky, and the earth was the earth. The sky was the father, and the earth was the mother. Everything in the world originated from parents. No matter how many miracles human beings created, they were just writing their legends. They were the origin of life. The spiritual space in Fang Yan's mind suddenly exploded, like a black curtain being torn apart, or like the scorching sun expelling the dark clouds above his head. The wind was gentle, and the sun was shining brightly. There was a wave of heat rolling up from the dantian of its abdomen, as if someone had placed a hot water bag there. Different from the past, this heat wave wasn't scorching. Instead, it gave people a lazy and comfortable feeling. The heart of Tai Chi rotated, and the Tai Chi field unfolded naturally. Everything in front of him changed. At the beginning, the heart of Tai Chi was three-dimensional, and the Tai Chi field was like a three-dimensional image. Birds, insects, and fish could be seen clearly, and even the slightest movement of grass could be sensed. In the fight against the Thousand Leaves Army, on the top of the One-Sword Mountain, Fang Yan's heart of Tai Chi made a second breakthrough when he encountered a crisis. The original three-dimensional image became clear lines. For example, a fish became a fish-shaped line, and a flower became a flower made of flower-shaped lines. It was like a beautiful canvas that had already taken shape, had turned into a simple and crude first draft. It looked like a step backward. However, Fang Yin knew that this wasn't a regression, but an improvement. This was because he was much more sensitive to his surroundings than before, and his timing and reaction speed were also much more appropriate and swift than before. Could it be that because of Fang Yan's new understanding of the earth and nature, the heart of Tai Chi was going to make a breakthrough for the third time? Seeing that Fang Yan was still sitting in the driver's seat, Chiba Haomu was about to urge him. Chiba looked at him and gestured for him to keep quiet. Chiba Haomu didn't dare to disobey his father. He could only stare at Fang Yan in confusion. Fang Yan's expression alternated between doubt and determination, sometimes sad, sometimes happy. As time passed, the warm current in his dantian gradually subsided. It was like a hot water bag that had been used for a long time. As the heat was taken away by the body, the hot water bag itself gradually cooled down. When the heart of Supreme Ultimate stopped, the Supreme Ultimate realm disappeared. Only then did Fang Yan wake up, his face full of regret. Congratulations, Chiba Haomu said aloud. Unfortunately, it's still not enough. Fang Yan said with a sigh. I don't know where I'm lacking. I don't know when I'll have to wait for the next breakthrough. For us, climbing martial arts is much more difficult and dangerous than climbing high mountains and dangerous peaks. Some people persist for decades and only go from 0 to 1. Some people gain enlightenment overnight. Some people stand at the top of the mountain to see how beautiful the scenery is, while others stand at the foot of the mountain to see how majestic the mountains are. There are scenery at the foot of the mountain. Chiba Haomu expressed his personal opinion. It's better to have some enlightenment than no enlightenment at all. This failure will become the starting point for the next climb. One day, you will stand on the mountain and look at the picturesque scenery. Thank you, Fang Yan said gratefully. Although he was a foreigner, it was difficult for him to form the concentric seal. However, this Japanese's broad-minded and magnanimous way of doing things were admirable. If my heart of Supreme Ultimate Realm breaks through again, because of your words, then our fate is really not shallow. When I'm 100 years old, my descendants will write a book about me, and they will definitely write about you. The Grandmaster of Supreme Ultimate Fang Yan has 2 breakthroughs because of the Japanese sword god Chiba Haomu. Chiba Haomu smiled silently and said, I may not be in your letter, but you will be in mine. That's fine, Fang Yan said with a smile. Remember to sign the book and give it to me. Chiba Haomu looked at Chiba Haomu and seriously reminded him in Japanese. Chiba Haomu was stunned and angrily stared at Fang Yan and said, Father, this bastard has no good intentions. I curse you to be unlucky. Chiba Haomu waved his hand and said, Unlucky is not because of other people's curses, but the arrangement of heaven and your own choice. Take note of what I just said. Yes, Father. Chiba Haomu had to agree. I will definitely give Father's letter to him. Don't let me down. Chiba Haomu smiled gently. When the car arrived at Swallow Dock, Fang Yan took Chiba Haomu and Chiba Haomu through the back door. He knew that this was a date between Chiba Haomu and the old drunkard. The others were outsiders, and there was no need to get involved in these things. Fang Yan pushed open the door to the courtyard, and a cold air with the aroma of wine immediately hit him in the face. Chiba Haomu greedily sniffed and said with a smile, Although I don't like to drink, I can still taste that this wine is good. It is indeed good wine, Fang Yan said with a smile. He brewed it himself. Then we have to drink a big bowl, Chiba Haomu said. I just don't know if Master is willing to welcome guests with good wine. Creak. On a rattan chair under the eaves, a man in a gray robe got up. Without looking at the 3 people standing at the door, he picked up the wine pot and took a gulp, saying, Friends from afar, how can I not have good wine to welcome them? There is a bowl on the wall, wash it yourself. There is a vat on the ground, wash it yourself. Good, Chiba Haomu said with a smile. He turned to look at Fang Yan and said, I'm here. You're here. Fang Yan nodded. He promised to help him meet the old drunkard, and he did it. I'm looking forward to your future, Chiba Haomu said. I know you will become a very great person, although you are already very great right now. Thank you. Fang Yan sincerely thanked him in a low voice. You are also a very great person. What you can do, I may not be able to do. Chiba Haomu looked at Chiba Haomu, reached out to untie and tighten the white silk on his forehead, and helped him tidy up his collar, like an ordinary father caring for his children. He smiled brightly and said in a gentle voice, "You can forget me, but remember every word I say." "Father." Chiba Hawu looked at his father in panic. "Take care of mother and sister." Chiba Hawu walked into the courtyard and closed the door. Fang Yin and Chiba Hawu also wanted to go in, but they were blocked by the wooden door. Chiba Hawu's eyes were red. Fang Yin glanced at him and said, "Your father. He is a very great person." Chiba Hawu stared at Fang Yin with a vicious look. He didn't understand what Fang Yin was saying. Chiba Hawu didn't use a bowl, but picked up a large vat. The mouth of the vat was facing down, and he opened his mouth to drink. After 2 or 3 mouthfuls he coughed violently. He spat out the wine. He put the vat down and said while gasping for breath, "Good wine. A very good wine. Drinking such strong wine, drinking strong wine like this. A man should be like this." Chiba Hawu carried the vat to the eaves of the corridor, sat down on the ground, and reclined in the corner. He said, "There is a kind of wine in the East called chrysanthemum wine. Although the name is elegant, it has a strong smell of wine. Drink it like fire, drink it and you will get drunk. There are many types of huaxia wine, too many to count. The one that left a deep impression on me was 3 bowls. I only drank 3 bowls and I passed out. I was drunk for 3 days and 3 nights. When I woke up, I found myself sleeping on Rachel's bed. She was kneeling on the bed, and she had already cooked porridge for me. Speaking of women, we East Asian women are the most gentle, respectful, and obedient. Last time, I came and left in a hurry, so I couldn't be a good host. If there's a chance, I'll definitely take you to the most famous peach art club. Drink golden wine, hold hands, and enjoy all the blessings in the world. Northern women are bold, Southern women are romantic. Sioux women are graceful, while Hunan women are passionate. The 3 famous clubs in Beijing, the Capital Club, the America Club, and the Chang'an Club have many beauties. There are many beauties in the north, south, east, and west, all competing for beauty, and there hasn't been a winner for thousands of years. The old drunkard didn't want to be outdone. When it comes to beauties, huaxia is number 1. That's very arrogant of you. Everyone has their own eyes. You're a fairy, and I'm an ugly woman. It's very normal. When I was young, I trained hard with the sword, and I saw a woman with the beauty of a deity. I chased her for thousands of miles, and finally, she fell in love with me. To me, beauties are like the stars, and I can pick them up with my hand. In order to challenge the Aikido master Ono Shinji, I fought his 13 disciples alone, and defeated him by my sword the next morning. I fought 83 battles in a row, and won 83 battles in a row. I single-handedly swept across the East Asian continent, defeated the 12 warriors of the West and the King of Savages, and challenged the Green Dragon with undefeated might. Now I'm the Green Dragon. The Green Dragon in white is awe-inspiring, and my sword shakes the world, and my roar shakes the 9 continents. Under my sword, who dares to challenge me? Unfortunately, you beat me to it. I heard that the 3 dragons and 7 tigers of Huaxia were guarding the peace of Huaxia. 20 years ago, I was prepared to go east and defeat them one by one, to show the might of East Asia. In the end, I killed my way there, and you were so scared that you didn't dare to go east for 20 years. Not a single warrior from East Asia dared to challenge me. At that time, we were still young, and we felt that there were countless possibilities. At that time, we were still young, and youth is capital. Chapter 418. His classmate was young and in his prime. He was full of scholarly spirit and full of vigor. He pointed out the country and inspired words. He was once a marquis of 10,000 households. Have you ever remembered that when you were in the middle of the stream, the waves stopped the flying boat? One was Mo Qingdi, one of the 3 dragons of Huaxia's 3 dragons and 7 tigers. The other was the Japanese sword god Chiba Hirobumi, who was worshipped by the martial artists of the country. The 2 of them were not talking about cultivation secrets, nor were they discussing some supreme sword techniques. They were like 2 ordinary middle-aged men, competing to see who had drunk the strongest alcohol, and bragged about who had played with the most beautiful women. They were like children competing and lecturing like perverts. If the outside world knew about this, they would be shocked. However, who could understand their sad state of mind at this time? It was more like mockery than showing off. Because what they were talking about was the peak of their lives that had been lost and could never return. They were like two injured wolf kings, snuggling up to each other to keep each other warm. Their existence itself was a kind of comfort to each other. It's been more than 20 years since we parted yesterday. The old drunkard looked leisurely, holding a wine gourd and pouring himself wine. He did not treat Chiba Hirobumi as a guest, and chatted with him, as if they were old friends. Although they had not seen each other for so many years, they did not feel unfamiliar. The friendship between gentlemen was as light as water. Perhaps this was the camaraderie between men. Fang Yin said you were coming. I was looking forward to your coming, but I was afraid of it. The red flowers bloomed and the green leaves withered. The cruelest thing in life is not living in a deep valley all your life. But when you climb from the deep valley to the top of the mountain with great difficulty, only to be kicked down by someone, what's the use of seeing a disabled person? Chiba Hirobumi put down the wine jar and looked at the old drunkard. Why did you meet me again? Because of fear, said the old drunkard. When I realized that I was afraid to see you, I had to see you. I don't believe in gods and Buddhas, and I'm not afraid of ghosts and gods. How can I be afraid to see people? That's a good reason, said Chiba Hirobumi. I'm the same as you. I'm also afraid to see you, but I still want to see you. Old drunkard took a sip of wine and didn't answer. He waited for Chiba to continue. 20 years ago, I was so confident that I could conquer Huaxia, but in the end, I was defeated by you single-handedly. I've been in seclusion for 20 years because I have fear in my heart. Chiba Hirobumi said, I'm not afraid of losing. I'm afraid of not being able to win. Every time I mustered up my courage and thought back to the battle at 8 Snake Mountain, there would be another voice in my heart telling me that I was very strong. But he was even stronger. You can't win. Again and again, he mustered up his courage and gave up again and again. Later, my son Chiba Hawu caused trouble in Huaxia and got injured. It was only then that I made up my mind to come here. Not to avenge my son, but because I felt that I had to come here. Only after I personally fought with you will I know who the victor is, and the difference between us. Otherwise, we can only live in fear for the rest of our lives. I understand. Old drunkard raised his wine gourd towards Chiba Shinobu. I salute you. Old drunkard liked to drink, but never respected people. This was the first time in many years that he raised his glass. Chiba Shinobu took a sip from the wine jar, wiped his mouth with his sleeve and said, This time, I still don't have the confidence to win, but I can't continue to wait. Because I'm worried that the longer I wait, the less courage I have. I'll be trapped on the island for the rest of my life, and never have the chance to set foot on land. I'm glad you came. It's an honor to meet you. Old drunkard asked. Do you want to fight again today? Today we must fight. Chiba Shinobu said firmly. He had waited for this battle for more than 20 years. He had also prepared for more than 20 years. How could he give up so easily? This was the demon that troubled him for half of his life. This was the cause and effect that motivated him to work hard. Old drunkard laughed and said, One has lost half of his inner energy, the other has no killing intent. Why fight? To fight. Chiba Shinobu said. The battle at 8 Snake Mountain has yet to be decided, and I still feel regretful. I've always felt that you owe me one, and I also owe you one. Let's settle it today, because you and I both know very well that after today, we won't have another chance. As you wish. Old drunkard said. Chiba Shinobu's dirty hand suddenly reached into the wine jar. His hand clawed hard as if he was grabbing something. What he grabbed was the wine, the intense fire like burning knife. The wine was shapeless, but after being wrapped by his inner energy, it actually took on the shape of a rectangular sword. The long sword was pulled into the air by him, but the wine sword in his hand didn't break. Not a single drop of wine splashed. This person's control of inner energy had reached perfection, like magic. Chiba Shinobu held the big sword in his hand and slashed towards old drunkard not far away. A sword that shocked the gods and split the mountains. The wine sword was like an iron sword, making a sizzling sound as it was swung. The air in front of him was split open by him. The space appeared to be distorted due to his ghostly speed and majestic power. Puff! Old drunkard who was sleeping on the chair spat out the wine in his mouth. Countless streams of wine turned into countless small swords that flew towards the incoming heavy sword. Bang, bang, bang. The huge wine sword and the countless small swords collided with each other, producing a crisp sound of metal hitting stone. Pieces of the wine sword were cut off by the small swords. The falling swords immediately melted into a stream of hot water, then evaporated into nothingness. The heavy sword didn't change its direction, but its speed became more ferocious. It slashed towards Mo Qingdi with an indomitable posture. After tearing off some of the giant sword's body, the countless small swords also pierced towards the Thousand Leaves Soldier Division, opposite them like moths flying in a dense pack. Crack! The rattan chair Mo Qingdi was sitting on was cut in half by the wine sword. Even the green brick floor was cut into deep grooves by the sword energy. It was as easy as a knife cutting through tofu. Bang, 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 bang. Countless small swords stabbed into the wall behind Chiba Shinobu, leaving countless small holes in the pure white wall. There was a puddle of wine outside of each small hole. This was the reason why the chi inside the wine sword had completely disappeared and scattered around. Mo Qingdi disappeared from the rattan chair, and Chiba Shinobu jumped up from the floor he was sitting on. The two of them stood in the courtyard at the same time, staring at each other. Chiba Shinobu looked at the old drunkard and sighed. If it was 20 years ago, this sword would have been able to crush my heavy sword into pieces. It will be hard to see such a spectacle again. What a pity. You only have sword energy and no killing intent. Why is that? Mo Qingdi asked in return. A sword without killing intent. Its power is only 90%. Because I don't want to kill you, Chiba Shinobu said. That's a troublesome matter. The old drunkard said. Yeah, it really is a troublesome matter, Chiba Shinobu said. Your inner energy is less than 50% of what it was back then, and your left hand could have stabbed one more time. It was very hard for me to dodge. I couldn't dodge that sword back then. Meeting is not as good as reminiscing, the old drunkard said sadly. If they couldn't fight to their heart's content, if they couldn't do their best to kill each other, then what was the point of fighting like this? What was the difference between this and children playing house? They had seen too many extraordinary things, so what they were afraid of now was this kind of dull and lifeless battle. That's right. Meeting is not as good as reminiscing, Chiba Shinobu said. You want to die? You don't want to live either. We really think the same way, Chiba Shinobu said. The two of them laughed at each other. During the fight just now, Chiba Shinobu almost killed the old drunkard, but he stopped. The old drunkard also almost killed Chiba Shinobu, but he held back. They were both despairing people, so despairing that they didn't mind dying under the sword of their most respected opponent. We should drink another vat, the old drunkard said. Chiba Shinobu refused, saying, I'll get drunk if I drink anymore. Let's get down to business. Once this is over, we can drink as much as we want. Then let's get down to business first, the old drunkard said. Whoever wins will have to drink to the winner. Then I'll have to trouble you, Chiba Shinobu sincerely said. Chiba Shinobu broke off a branch from the pear tree above his head, broke off the fork on the branch, then used this crooked branch as a sword. Mo Qingdi flicked his foot and caught a mop in his hand. With a flick of his wrist, the cloth straps on the mop flew off, turning the long stick in his hand into a spear. Take this sword of mine, Chiba Shinobu said with an extremely solemn expression. This is the sword that I've been thinking about day and night. The sword that gave me the deepest understanding in the last 20 years. I've always wanted to bring it to see you. This sword, I've named it Unintentional. Be careful. Got it, the old drunkard nodded seriously. Chiba Shinobu moved. Chiba Shinobu clearly moved, but his body was still standing in the same place. That was just his afterimage. And the ball of mystery that looked like an afterimage was the real body of Chiba Shinobu. Because his speed was too fast, it created an illusion to the eyes, creating the illusion that Shinya Shinobi was not moving at all. He thrusted his sword straight out. Thrust his sword that was made from a tree branch. It was a straight sword, a plain sword. It was like a very ordinary man holding a tree branch and stabbing it at his enemy's chest. It was not fancy, not stunning, no sound of wind and thunder, and no energy. It was just a tree branch. It was an ordinary sword thrust by an ordinary person. It looked really disappointing. However, the old drunkard couldn't help but lift his sleepy eyelids. His confused eyes were filled with light. His expression was unprecedentedly serious. It was like seeing a pile of gold, or a piece of rare treasure. 10,000 swords is one. 10,000 sword techniques could be condensed into this sword, and 10,000 changes could be performed into this sword. Endless life. No change was the biggest change, because it could change in countless ways at any time. If there were no tracks, then there were no traces to be found. No sword will, no defense. After 20 years of sword comprehension, he finally thrust this sword. Chiba Shinobu deserved to be called the sword god of Japan. Chapter 419. If one's eyes were sharp enough, if one's eyes were the eyes of Emo Chingdi, then one would know how marvelous this sword was. At least in Emo Chingdi's eyes, this sword was not static and ordinary. It was not a branch but a real sword. A peerless sword. It was trembling slightly, out of fear and excitement. Perhaps it was because of his birth. It was the sword that was trembling, not Chiba's hand that was trembling. He had stabbed out tens of millions of times. No matter what the situation was, his hand that held the sword never trembled. The body of the sword had a life of its own. It had an independent consciousness. It aimed at the old drunkard's eyebrows, eyes, throat, chest, heart, or abdomen. It could even attack the lower body of the old drunkard, piercing the 29 acupoints of the old drunkard and the 72 acupoints of the old drunkard's calf. It covered all the fatal points on the old drunkard's body, as well as all the acupoints on the old drunkard's body. The name of the sword was unintentional. In other words, at the moment of the final attack, even Chiba himself did not know where he would stab. It was only a few tenths of a second, or even less. You couldn't blink, you couldn't breathe, and your heart didn't beat. The interval between one heartbeat and the next, it was shorter than that. Chiba disappeared from where he stood, and stabbed at the old drunkard's throat. Yes, at the last moment, he finally locked on to the target he wanted. The throat. The sword pierced the throat. The old drunkard finally moved. The old drunkard finally moved. He rushed toward Chiba with the long stick in his hand. He left an afterimage where he stood, and his body turned into nothingness. In an ugly and barbaric manner, he raised the long stick in his hand and stabbed it towards Chiba Shinobi. The stick didn't even have a sharp spearhead. Their bodies brushed past each other. Or it could be said that two blurry shadows brushed past each other. It was just a change of position. It was just a change of the way they interacted. From standing face to face, they stood with their backs to each other. Chiba stood where the old drunkard had just stood, and the old drunkard also stood in Chiba's footprints. Then everything became still. Their bodies gradually became clearer, and they became two living bodies, no longer a blurry shadow. The gray sky was like someone's black face, and the white world was so dreamy. Two men in loose robes with big sleeves stood in a small independent courtyard. Because of the small size of the courtyard, their figures seemed strangely tall and imposing, just like the war gods of ancient times. The branch in Hashimoto Chiba's hand was dripping blood. 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops. The red blood slowly melted the snow on the ground. The chest area of the old drunkard's gray robe was dyed brown with blood. Just when the old drunkard thought that the sword would stab his throat, the thousand-leaves soldier changed his move and attacked his chest again. There were only a few people in this world who could accelerate at such a fast speed. The wooden stick in the old drunkard's hand flew away towards the wooden door of the small courtyard. Like a spear, it stuck in the middle of the wooden door. Half of the stick went in, leaving only a short section exposed in the courtyard. Why? The old drunkard asked in a heavy voice. 20 years ago, I lost to you, Hashimoto Chiba said softly. His voice was soft and gentle, as if he was reluctant to leave and relieved. That's the reason? 20 years later, I lost to Fang Yen. That's the reason. Huaxia is too powerful. Hashimoto Chiba sighed and said, Huaxia is too powerful. 20 years ago, I had the ambition to conquer Huaxia with Japanese kendo and make it more powerful. Unfortunately, before I could take that step, I was forced back by you. 20 years later, I gathered the courage to go east again. The result was even worse than the last time. I was defeated by a nobody in Huaqing. Fang Yan is a genius in martial arts, and there are not many geniuses like Fang Yan in Huaxia. Even a young girl who is close to Fang Yan, with her talent, will not be inferior to me in the future. I still have hope after losing to you. I hope that one day, I will come back with a sword and wash away the shame with blood. But when I saw them, I really lost all hope. There are too many talents in Huaxia, and the young people in Huaxia are too powerful. It's a pity that we don't have any young men and women like them. Not even one. God is so unfair to us. I've always been curious about what kind of magic the land of Huaxia has, how it can raise its children to be so outstanding and brave. I'm alive. They see me as a god, as the hope of Japanese martial arts. I know very well that I'm not their hope. I will only bring them illusory psychological comfort and a temporary dose of spiritual medicine. This kind of psychological comfort and spiritual medicine can deceive them, can numb them, let them still have expectations and fantasies. I believe that one day, I will bring them victory and glory. The consequences of this are too heavy. You single-handedly fought against dozens of Japanese islands. Your glory was boundless, and you completely trampled on the dignity of Japanese martial arts. You made Huaxia the Green Dragon, but none of the Japanese martial arts came out. Everyone hid in their own small homes and licked their wounds. Our generation has completely lost. What about the next generation? When a young man like Fang Yan truly grows up, when he becomes an incomparably sharp sword like you, when he does what you did all those years ago, charging into the East Ocean alone with a sword, when that time comes, who among the East Ocean's youths will be able to stop him? Who can go against him? My generation has lost, bringing fear into the hearts of the young martial arts. If the next generation of martial arts loses, what kind of psychological impact will it have on the next generation of martial arts? Every time we lose, the morale will drop. After losing 3 times in a row, where will the morale be? Where will the talents be? Who will protect our people? Who will guard our country? Chiba of the army covered his throat and coughed lightly. Fresh blood dyed his palms red. Blood flowed out from the gaps between his fingers, drawing a delicate abstract picture. Don't underestimate your enemy. I really envy you. Envy that you were born in the great Huaxia. Envy that you have this black land under your feet. Envy that you have so many talents. Envy that you are proud and fearless. How good would it be if Fang Yan was from our country? How good would it be if Fang Yan was from our country? If that's the case, why would I have to walk on this path of no return? Why would it be like this? The old drunkard said with a sigh. Only when you are alive will there be hope. Only when you are alive can you see a longer future. Living is the most important thing. From the azure dragon of Huaxia to the drunkard of today, the tendons in his hand are broken, and there is no hope for him to recover. The woman you love the most has left you, sinking your heart into a swamp, and plunging you into eternal hell. Every day you are sober is a day of pain. Every time you think you are sad. I am such a poor person, but I still live. If I were to die, I don't know how many times I would have died. You are alive because you still have hope in your heart. Chiba Hirobumi said softly. I haven't seen you for many years, but I didn't expect that my old friend, who was famous in Huaxia, would fall into such a situation. Your meridians are broken because you believe that they will break out of the cage one day. The woman you love the most has left you, because you believe that she will come back one day, or that she has always been there. There is really no hope for me to live. 20 years after another 20 years, how many more 20 years can I have? In the next 20 years, when my hair is white, will I have the courage to go east again with a sword to challenge the heroes of Huaxia? At that time, I am afraid that I can't even hold the sword steadily, right? I can't save the Japanese martial arts if I am alive. Only when I am dead can they be completely desperate. Chiba Hirobumi said with a very firm voice. He believed in the future he hoped for. Only when people are at their most desperate can they burst out with unimaginable potential. I believe in the thousands of Japanese martial arts practitioners, and I look forward to their future. I know that countless young talents like Fang Yin will grow up among them. Only then will there be the prosperity of Japan and the resurgence of Japanese martial arts. Do you have any regrets? Regrets? Chiba Hirobumi thought for a moment and said, I hope that I won't be put on a pedestal by others in my next life. Because once I go up, I can never come back down. I just want to be a swordsman. Chiba Hirobumi's body slowly knelt on the ground, and then he lay flat on all fours in the snow. The wooden stick had pierced through his abdomen, leaving a pitch-black hole there. The white clothes on his body were dyed red by the blood, and the snow on the ground was also dyed red by the blood. White clothes and white snow had become red clothes and red snow. Chiba opened his eyes and looked at the sky above his head, saying, We Dongyang do not have such a land, so I will bury myself here. I will turn myself into a handful of dust here. Bless my people to have more strong men. Bless the martial arts of Dongyang to prosper. Please forgive my selfishness, Chiba Hirobumi said with a chuckle, because only dying in your hands is a true liberation for me. I forgive you, the old drunkard said gently. The strong are lonely, and Fang Yin also needs an opponent to sharpen himself. We've agreed that the winner will drink to the winner, Chiba Hirobumi said with a smile. The smile came from the bottom of his heart, warm and peaceful. The old drunkard walked to the corner, picked up a large jar, and gulped it down. His head and face were covered in alcohol, and his stomach was filled with it. He poured the remaining half of the jar next to Chiba Hirobumi's head. Chiba Hirobumi smelled the rich fragrance of the wine, and closed his eyes with a gratified expression. The Japanese sword god Chiba Hirobumi had fallen. Chapter 420. Little White was Fang Haohen's rabbit. It liked to eat vegetable leaves and corn chips. It also had a very bad habit of drinking alcohol. It liked to drink the shadozi in the old drunkard's yard. Every time it was Fang Haohen's turn to bring food and soup to his master, or help his master clean up the yard, he would bring Little White over to have a sumptuous meal. At that time, it would drink the shadozi in the yard as it pleased. Every time, it would lie on the ground drunk, and be carried back by Fang Haohen, like a little drunkard. Today, as usual, Fang Haohen carried Little White over to help his master clean up the house. He also gave the alcoholic Little White a small plate of shadozi, to celebrate its growth of 1 year. Suddenly, he saw Chiba Haowu standing at the entrance of his master's yard. Fang Haohen's face was full of vigilance. He immediately rushed to the entrance of the yard, stared at Chiba Haowu, and shouted, Chiba Haowu, what are you doing here? Seeing that Fang Haohen was full of hostility towards him, Chiba Haowu immediately put on a posture that made it seem like he would counterattack at any time. All right. Fang Yin waved his hand and said, Why are you pretending to be a loyal and filial son? I'm standing here. If they want to do something bad, how can I let them in? Fang Haohen chuckled. Both sides of his cheeks were deeply sunken. Even if the skin on his entire face was cut off, it would still be less than 2 ounces. Fang Haohen walked in front of Fang Yin and whispered, Junior martial uncle, these 2 Japanese. Slap. Fang Yin slapped him on the head and said angrily, He doesn't understand Huaxia language. You don't have to speak so sneakily. Oh, then I'm relieved. Fang Haohen breathed a sigh of relief and said, Why did they come to our swallow dock? Aren't they looking for trouble? I'm going to ring the alarm bell at the entrance of the village, and get everyone to come, and wrap them up like dumplings. They've all come to our doorstep and into our yard. Aren't they bullying us? Shut up, Fang Yin said. Do you know what it means by heroes cherishing heroes? I know. In Fang Yingying's eyes, the most awesome person is Fang Yingying. This is what they mean by heroes cherishing heroes. Pa! Fang Yin slapped Fang Haohen's head again. It was impossible to explain things to these 2 little bastards. Fang Haohen dodged with the rabbit in his arms and said in a wrong tone, I didn't say anything wrong. It's not like you don't know the condition of Master's body. They came here to show off. Aren't they just making things difficult for Master? What does Master care about the most? What he was most concerned about was that his meridians were severed, and there was no way for him to return to his peak state. If that old man, who was always pretending to be mysterious, challenged Master, with Master's temperament, he would definitely not refuse. What was this? When a tiger falls to the plains, it will be bullied by dogs. If he's so capable, let him fight you. Fang Yin knew that Fang Haohan was worried about the safety of the old drunkard, and the possibility of what he said was very high. Moreover, didn't the Chiba army come all the way here to finish the unfinished battle in the past? If the Chiba army challenged the old drunkard would definitely not refuse. Just like when Fang Yin was challenged by the Chiba army, although he was scared to death, even if he really had to die, he would not refuse. Some things had nothing to do with life and death, but with dignity. In the past, the old drunkard used to drown his sorrows with alcohol. If he was forced by external forces, the old drunkard would probably die to drown his sorrows. Such a proud man, such a glorious hero, had fallen into such a situation. Perhaps living was more of a torture than dying, right? However, even knowing this answer, Fang Yin still did not stop the two of them from meeting, because except for the old drunkard himself, no one was qualified to make such a decision for him. For such a man, what they needed the most was understanding and respect, not protection and pity. Fang Yin looked at Fang Haohan and said, "Is there any use in stopping them?" "No." Fang Haohan shook his head. "Then stand aside and pray," said Fang Yin. Fang Haohan stared at Chiba Haohan unkindly and said, "Since we have nothing to do, why don't I beat him up? Who asked his father to challenge my master?" Fang Yin glanced at Chiba Haohan and said, "Whatever." The person he respected was the Chiba army, and as for this guy, he really did not have a good impression of him. He also knew that Chiba Haohan did not have a good impression of him either. If the opportunity was ripe, maybe this guy would stab him with a knife. Fang Yin was on guard against him. In the end, Fang Haohan did not challenge Chiba Haohan, because just as he was about to do so, he heard the sound of wood breaking in the yard. "They've started fighting," said Fang Haohan anxiously. He hugged Little White tightly in his arms, like an ugly little girl who had been frightened. It would be difficult to find a woman uglier than Fang Haohan. Chiba Haohan also heard the sound, and did not have time to guard against Fang Haohan's possible sneak attack from behind. He quickly ran to the wooden door, wanting to look through the gap. Fang Yin took a step forward and pulled him aside from the door. If the two men inside were to kill each other, this small yard would be torn apart by them in minutes. Even a branch or leaf flying out from inside could kill someone. Chiba Haohan ran to the door and lay down, and if he was not careful, he would be killed. To be honest, Fang Yin really did not care about Chiba Haohan's life, because he had always felt that this guy was too narrow-minded and evil. However, if Chiba Haohan came out and found his son dead, would he suspect him of being the culprit? It would not be good to cause such a misunderstanding. After a few noises, there was no more movement in the yard. Fang Haohan looked at Fang Yin, and Chiba Haohan also looked at Fang Yin. Fang Yan's expression was solemn, but he did not say anything. He could feel the murderous aura in the yard, and the situation did not seem right. Thinking of all the strange things that happened when Chiba Haohan came, Fang Yin had a very bad feeling. These two people were not going to fight to the death, were they? Fang Yin became anxious and hesitated whether he should push open the wooden door and force his way in. Creak! The wooden door opened from the inside. The old drunkard stood at the door and first glanced at Chiba Haohan, then said to Fang Yin, "Japanese sword god Chiba Haohan died in battle." "Father." Chiba Haohan had already seen his father's body lying in the snow on the ground, and miserably threw himself over. Fang Yan's expression was gloomy as he looked at Chiba Haohan's serene face after his death. He was alive and well just a moment ago, but now he had become a corpse without breathing or a heartbeat. Life was impermanent, that was all. She recalled the first time they met. She recalled their battle at One Sword Peak. She recalled how he suddenly jumped up and pushed her away to avoid the shots of those flying people. She recalled how he stood under the osmanthus tree in the courtyard in his white robe. She also recalled how he asked her to stop the car by the roadside and run into the wheat field like a child. She then stepped on the cold black soil with her bare feet. Father! Chiba Hauhan put his hand on the wound on his father's stomach, but no matter how hard he tried, the blood kept gushing out. Not only from the front, but from the back as well. The large piles of snow in the yard were melted by the warm blood, and the melted ice and blood mixed together, forming even more ice water. The ice water soaked Chiba Hauhan's body like a natural hotbed. As the blood from Chiba Hauhan's body kept gushing out, the color of the ice water became thicker and thicker. The yard was filled with the smell of blood. Chiba Hauhan saw the branch in his father's hand, so he grabbed it and charged at the old drunkard, who was drinking from a wine jar in the corner. I'm going to kill you, Chiba Hauhan yelled, looking a little hysterical. He was going crazy. He was going crazy. He never thought that he would encounter something like this while accompanying his father to visit a friend in Beijing. The man who was like a god of war in his heart, the undefeated hero, was lying in a pool of blood like his previous opponents. How could he die? How could he die? He was the Japanese god of war, his most powerful father. All this time, he had been under his father's care and protection. He was arrogant because his father was the Japanese god of swords. He worked hard because his father was the Japanese god of swords. He always felt that he still had a lot of time. Under his father's guidance and protection, he would definitely be able to achieve as much as his father. Perhaps even more dazzling than his father. But why was his father suddenly gone? It was this man who took his father away. He wanted to kill him. He had to kill him. Whoosh! He was only halfway there when a large jar of wine suddenly poured over his head. The cold wine drenched his clothes and messed up his hair. Even the white silk tied around his forehead loosened and was about to fly away. Most importantly, it froze him from head to toe and sobered him up. His eyes turned blood red, and he stared unblinkingly at the old drunkard. His breathing was rapid, but his body seemed to have been immobilized, unable to move at all. The old drunkard didn't get angry. He looked at him expressionlessly and said, "You are a lucky guy because you have a great father. You are also a tragic guy because your father is too great." Chiba still stared unblinkingly at the old drunkard. He seemed to understand what the old drunkard said, but it also seemed like he didn't understand anything. The old drunkard shifted his gaze to Fang Yen and said, "He wants to stay and let his body become a pile of dust in Huaxia. If he wants to see the vastness and depth of Huaxia, then let him have a good look. If he wants to use his feet to measure the courage and foundation of Huaxia, then let him have a good look. Let him wear my shroud, live in my coffin, and enter my tomb, a grand burial." Chapter 421. According to the customs of the villagers, it was a very inauspicious thing to hang a white banner in the first month. However, to the people of Swallow Dock, it was nothing out of the ordinary. On the eve of the Lunar New Year's Eve, the family would gather together to eat, drink, and happily welcome the new year. Then, they would receive a call from the northern borderline, or the southern sea. Their family members had unfortunately died in battle. Everyone would silently put down their bowls, chopsticks, and wine glasses, and raise the white flags that had been prepared under the boxes. They believed that the white banners could summon souls. They couldn't retrieve the corpses of their loved ones, and most of the time, they couldn't even retrieve their ashes. However, they hoped that they could summon the souls of their loved ones back to their roots, so that they could meet in their dreams. Sacrifice was the norm. However, this was the first time Swallow Dock had raised the white banner for a foreigner, and it was for an East Asian at that. Qianyabin died in battle. According to his last words, he hoped that he would stay in Huaxia and let his body turn into a pile of dust. The old drunkard gave Fang Yen full authority to handle this matter. He also gave his shroud, coffin, and tomb to the Thousand Leaves military department. Yes, making burial clothes, making coffins, and reserving graves for the living was also an ancient tradition of Swallow Dock. Moreover, only the most respected person in the family would receive such preferential treatment and glory. These people could enter the ancestral mountain after they died, and their spirit tablets could be placed in the family's ancestral hall. Now the old drunkard had given this honor to the Thousand Leaves Military Department. Of course, the memorial tablet of the Thousand Leaves Military Department could not be placed in the Fong family's ancestral hall. Everyone was worried that the Qinya division of the army would fight with the ancestors of the Fong clan after they entered. After all, everyone's habits and way of thinking were still very different. Fong Yin conducted the funeral for Qinya and hung white banners on the tallest camphor tree in the courtyard of the Fong family. Bai Hui personally wrote an elegiac couplet for Hero Bai to hang on the door. A foreign guest from the Chiba army, a hero of heaven and earth, the Japanese sword god. Fong Yixing led Fong Hao, Zhao Qingxin, and the rest to slaughter pigs and sheep, preparing for the feast. The old drunkard said he would give him a proper burial. So naturally, the Fong family would give him a proper burial. Banquets were an essential part of a grand funeral. Whenever there was a wedding or a funeral, the villagers had to be invited to have a good meal. The more extravagant and lively the banquet, the more it could be called a funeral. This was no different from the outside world. At the door of the small house, the teacher was holding a big teacup and looking in the direction of the Fong family. He asked, "What's the matter with the Fong family?" The Japanese sword god Chiba came to Swallow Dock to challenge Mo Qinglong and died in battle. After his death, he left his last words, hoping that he could be buried in Huaxia and become a pile of dust in the earth. The Fong family is currently preparing for his funeral. Bai Xiao, who was standing behind him, replied softly, "How much power have you recovered from underestimating the enemy?" The teacher asked. "Less than 50%. How powerful is the Thousand Leaves army?" 20 years ago, they were evenly matched. After 20 years of comprehending the swordsmanship of the Chiba military division had become even more refined. 10,000 swords become one. He was almost invincible in East Asia. Those who saw the battle with Fong Yen at One Sword Peak said that he was a very terrifying opponent. If it weren't for Fong Yan's sudden breakthrough in his Taiji heart, it would have been very difficult for him to win this match. In that case, how did Mo Qingdi defeat Qinya Bing, who was at his peak condition with less than half of his strength? He came to seek death, Bai Xiao said with a sigh. The Fong family values kinship and righteousness. They did a good job. The teacher pondered for a long time and said, "Hang my white banner." "Mister," Bai Xiao stopped him. If the teacher hung the white banner, the death of the Thousand Leaves army would become a big deal for the entire Swallow Dock. "Hang it." The teacher waved his hand and said firmly, "Mr. hung the white banner." Fong Yingying ran to Fong Yen and said while panting, "The Yi family hung the white banner." Fong Haohan moved to Fong Yen and whispered, "The Li family hung the white banner." The Ruan family hung the white banner. The entire Swallow Dock was full of white banners. The Fong family hung the white banner because of the deep relationship between the old drunkard and the Thousand Leaves army, and also because Fong Yen and the Thousand Leaves army were both enemies and friends. The teacher hung the white banner because he deduced the truth from some unusual information. Heroes cherished heroes. How could the teacher's action not be a hero's? The other villagers of Swallow Dock hung the white banner because they began to pay attention to this matter and learned about it. Then, they respected and admired this foreign guest from the bottom of their hearts. Perhaps when they met on the battlefield, they would engage in a bloodthirsty fight to the death. However, this did not affect their favorable impression of their opponent, because they were the same kind of people. If they were not the same kind of people, why would they meet in such a dangerous place? If they weren't the same kind of people, why would they give up their lives for a goal that seemed to be empty and meaningless? They could also live in a prosperous city like thousands of people, find a comfortable job, marry a beautiful wife, and have a few lovely children. With their abilities, they could live a more comfortable and safe life. But why did they meet on the battlefield? The news of the death of the Thousand Leaves army's father spread to Huaqing, and Huaqing spread the news of the Thousand Leaves army's death to the IGA One Blade School. The IGA One Blade School spread the news of the Thousand Leaves army's death to the entire East Ocean, and the even more distant world of martial artists. In the dojo of the IGA One-Blade School, a long-bearded man with black silk tied around his head was silent. Several rows of young martial artists sitting across from him looked at the middle-aged man with serious expressions. Everyone, the king of our IGA One-Blade School, the sword god of East Ocean, Mr. Chiba Abe challenged one of the 3 dragons of Huaxia, the Azure Dragon. Don't underestimate him, and unfortunately, he died in the battle, the black-bearded man said in a hoarse voice. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands were clenched tightly. Boom! The crowd was in an uproar. Mr. Chiba Abe, did he really die? Impossible. How could our sword god be defeated by their Azure Dragon? He is invincible, it's impossible. He killed our sword god. We will fight him to the death. I don't want to believe it either, but this is the truth that I know. This is a disgrace to our IGA One-Blade School, and a disgrace to all East Ocean martial artists. The man happened to lead the young martial artists into an emotional outburst. A debt of blood must be paid with blood. Please practice hard, everyone, and in the future, our blood will flow in the Azure Dragon. Wash the Azure Dragon with blood. Wash the Azure Dragon with blood. Wash the Azure Dragon with blood. Saka One-Blade School. On the spacious dojo, a white-robed old man angrily stated this fact. Although Chiba Abe is from the IGA sect that is our competitor, the East Ocean martial artists are one family. They were bound together for glory and bound together for shame. The Azure Dragon of Huaxia killed our East Ocean martial artists, and if we don't avenge him, we will be in vain as human beings. Everyone, please work hard, and we will challenge the Azure Dragon in the future to avenge Chiba Abe. Revenge! 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 The black-robed swordsmen waved the machetes in their hands and shouted at the top of their lungs. At the foot of Yamasaki Mountain, Koga Clan Ninja Village, 2 men sat opposite each other in a simple thatched hut. One was a middle-aged man in black with several scars on his face, and the other was a skinny old man. It was hard to tell his age, but he was too old. His skin was so loose that it looked like it was about to fall off. His teeth had all fallen out, and it was difficult for him to even open his eyes. Chiba Abe has fallen. This is the death of U.S. East Ocean martial artists. The bald man said angrily. Chiba Abe has always been the totem of U.S. East Ocean martial artists, and also the hero in our hearts. Now that he has also died in the hands of the Azure Dragon of Huaxia, our ninja clan can't turn a blind eye. I will go to Huaxia to challenge the 3 dragons and 7 tigers. If I win, it will prove that we East Ocean martial artists are not weak. If I lose, then let me die on the battlefield. The old man opened his eyes with difficulty, and his loose eyelids almost covered most of his pupils. He carefully looked at the bald man in front of him and said, Kakuto-kun, it's good that you can make such a choice. You are indeed the pride of us Koga ninjas. As a jonin, you need to stand up in times of crisis like this. Go and see their 3 dragons and 7 tigers. I look forward to your return. At that time, I will personally crown you as the king of ninjas. Even if you die in battle, isn't it a kind of glory? Chiba Abe walked a path that no one has taken before, and he made a choice that we don't have the courage to make. He is a hero, the soul of our country. You too. The bald man knelt on the ground, kowtowed 3 times, and turned to leave without saying a word. Clang! The door closed, and the oil lamp in the room went out with a whoosh. Do you know? Our East Ocean sword god died in battle in Huaxia. God, I really can't accept it. Huaxia has 3 dragons and 7 tigers, and each of them is a 1 in a million master. Azure Dragon, don't underestimate your enemy. 20 years ago, he broke into East Ocean alone with a sword and fought dozens of East Ocean masters. He didn't stop conquering until he met Chiba Abe, who was equally young and talented. If it wasn't for Chiba Abe, if it wasn't for our East Ocean sword god, all of our East Ocean martial artists would have been trampled under his feet. East Ocean swordsmen, do you have the guts? Do you still have any passion? If you are not a group of cowards, then go and seek justice for our sword god. Kill Azure Dragon, avenge. Chiba Abe's death provoked the anger and hatred of the entire East Ocean martial arts world. One after another, dojos and sects stood up. They hung Chiba Abebe's portrait at the door of the dojo, and they swore to avenge the sword god. Chiba Abebe became a god. After the sword god, there was no more sword god. Chapter 422. That night, several disciples of Chiba's battalion escorted his wife and daughter, Chiba Kaori, to Beijing. Chiba Kaori's wife was called Ozawa Wakako. She was a respectful, gentle, and beautiful woman. Chiba Kaori's good looks were inherited from her. She treated the Fong family very calmly. After bowing to express her gratitude, she knelt next to her husband's body and wiped his face with a silk handkerchief over and over again. Chiba Kaori bowed to Fong Yen, then knelt together with her brother, Chiba Haomu, and burned incense for their father. The beautiful and carefree girl's face was pale, and she looked unusually haggard. It was obvious that her father's death had hit her hard. It was only because of her excellent upbringing that she put away her weak and worthless tears in front of outsiders. Phantom and the other disciples became Fong Yan's right-hand men, and they did whatever Fong Yan asked them to do. There was no ill will between the two parties, as if the death of Chiba Kaori had nothing to do with the Fong family. It had nothing to do with me. Fong Yan lay on the rattan chair that the old drunkard often used. He held a big bowl in his hand and drank a mouthful of wine. He really wanted to drink today, so he naturally came to the old drunkard. If we think about it carefully, the Fong family is the one who suffered the most, right? Chiba Kaori, that sly old man, lost his will to win, and he was worried about the future of the Japanese martial artists, so he came up with such a lousy move to help himself in Japan. If the news that the Japanese sword god died in your hands spreads to Japan, you will become their public enemy, and the Fong family will become their enemy. I'm afraid that every Japanese martial artist will have a new goal when they practice swordsmanship: to learn the divine skill and kill the Azure Dragon. Tell me, what are we after? The old drunkard stood in the courtyard with a wine gourd in his hand. He kept drinking, but he didn't answer Fong Yan's questions. He used his death to awaken the Japanese martial artists' desire to work hard, and used your hands to ignite their hatred. We respect him, and I do think he's a good person. But can a good person plot against others? Why? We didn't get anything. He didn't even give me $100. But we've done so many things for him, and made ourselves the target of a country. Aren't we being too kind? We know it's not good for us, but we can't not do it. We have to do it. Why do I feel so upset? If I were to find him, he would do the same, old drunkard said in a dull voice. He was silent for a long time before he suddenly spoke. This made Fong Yin feel that the voice did not come from his mouth, but someone else was talking to them. Are you that confident? You don't believe me? Fong Yin thought about it seriously and said, he is indeed such a person. On the way back to pick him up, I suddenly realized something. Then he stood by my side and guarded me carefully. He was worried that I would be in danger. If he had taken action at that time, I wouldn't have stood a chance. However, I wasn't worried at all. I'm a narrow-minded guy. Since when did I trust someone so much? But his son's emotions were very unstable. There were several times when I wanted to take action, but he stopped me with his eyes. I should have been the one to die, old drunkard said. You've never said something like that before, Fong Yin advised seriously. He didn't want old drunkard to die, even if he knew it would be crueler for him to live. But wouldn't there be nothing left after death? In the past, I thought I still had hope. Just like what he said, I hoped that I could find myself again and return to my best state. I hoped that she would always be there and never leave. So I kept waiting. But now, I'm a little tired of waiting, and I'm tired of drinking. So I want to die. I don't know what death is like. Maybe it's more interesting than living? I don't know either, Fong Yin said. But if you die, you won't have a chance to prove that you can return to your original glory. You also can't believe that she has always been there and never left. Also, Dragon God has a tough life. You can't just let him break your tendons, right? When there's a chance to take revenge, you still have to beat him up in front of everyone. Even if you don't care about any of this, and let it go. What about me? Have you let me go as well? Old Drunkard thought about his words for a long time, but found that he still didn't know how to answer Fang Yan's question. What do you mean I've let you go? When did I ever carry you? Besides, if he dies, you have to live, Fang Yan angrily said. You owe so much, you've pulled the hatred of an entire country's martial artists. If you die, won't they come after me for revenge? My skin is thin and my flesh is tender, how could I be their match? Old Drunkard was speechless for a long time. Standing in the middle of the courtyard with the gourd in his hand, he even forgot to drink. Crack! Old Drunkard suddenly exerted force, crushing the gourd in his hand into pieces. He lifted a large jar and gulped down a mouthful of wine. Then he swung the large jar and smashed it at the other jars. Clang! The two jars collided with each other, making a loud noise. He picked up the second vat and smashed it towards the other vat. Then the third jar smashed into even more jars. Clang, 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 clang. Old Drunkard smashed all the jars in the courtyard. Even the new wine he brewed on New Year's Eve was smashed. Stop drinking. Old Drunkard breathed out like a sword and shouted. When Old Drunkard smashed the jars, Fang Yan understood what he wanted to do. Obviously, Qianye's death had greatly affected Old Drunkard. Someone didn't hesitate to die to fulfill his wish, so how could the torture he was suffering compare to that? But he didn't cheer, nor would he help. He wanted to watch helplessly as the Old Drunkard personally smashed these wine jars, personally smashed the new and old wine he brewed, personally smashed his current rotten and tattered life into pieces. He's been drowning for too long. He should have been reborn a long time ago. Until all the jars in the courtyard were smashed, the tiles were broken, and the wine was spilled all over the courtyard. Even the air was filled with the strong smell of burning knives, making one feel intoxicated. Good, good. Good, Fang Yan shouted good 3 times in a row. He jumped up from his chair and said, I knew this day would come. I've been waiting for this day. I knew you would stand up again. I knew you would soar to the sky. I knew it would be like this. The humiliation of one person is better than the humiliation of a family, and the humiliation of a family is better than the humiliation of a country. I know that the news of this battle has the effect of gathering the ambition of the Japanese martial artists and provoking their hatred. But what's there to be afraid of? Mo Qingdi ignored Fang Yan's flattery and went into an invincible performance. If I could challenge the 36 islands of the East Ocean and fight 36 East Ocean people by myself, then I can challenge the 36 islands of the East Ocean and fight 36 East Ocean people by myself again. 20 years ago, I could defeat Sword God once, then I can defeat Sword God again. 20 years later, I can kill Sword God once, then I can kill Sword God again. From now on, no one in Japanese will dare to call themselves Sword God. Fang Yan was so excited that his body was trembling, unable to control himself. Just listen, what's heroic spirit? What's heroic spirit? What's a perfect example of acting cool? From a certain point of view, Fang Yan isn't even fit to carry the Old Drunkard's shoes. Fang Yan was very excited, but also very self-conscious. He drank the liquor in his bowl in one gulp and loudly cheered. That's how a man should be, to match the Old Drunkard's heroic spirit, to match the current atmosphere. Fang Yan even sang a war song. This was a song the Old Drunkard taught him when he was young. Boiling blood like the waves in the river, like the waves in the sea, always stirring my heart just because the humiliation hasn't been cleared. Fang Yan sang with a high spirit. His blood vessels swelled. He sang with passion. He sang with a sense of self-satisfaction. The Old Drunkard waited for him to finish, then happily said, It's good that you have such ambition, the things I mentioned. I'll leave them to you from now on. Dash. If I can do it, so can you, the Old Drunkard said. After that, he turned around and walked into the house. From now on, he would no longer sleep on the reclining chair under the eaves of the corridor, or in a corner. Fang Yan stood alone in the wind and snow, his expression a little sad and melancholy. The Chiba Ministry of War was buried in peace. Ghost Shadow brought his wife Ozawa Wakako, Chiba Keiru and Chiba Haomu to thank the Fang family. After hearing about the deeds of the Chiba Ministry of War, Luwan respected this family very much, and was full of sympathy for Ozawa Wakako. She took Ozawa Wakako's hand and said a lot of comforting words. Someone next to her helped translate. Ozawa Wakako expressed her gratitude and bowed to Luwan again and again. In the end, she bowed so much that Luwan didn't dare to speak. Chiba Halmu stared at Fang Yin fiercely and firmly. After bowing deeply to him, he said, "I will definitely defeat you." Slap. Fang Yin slapped Chiba Halmu's head. After that, he slapped Chiba Halmu's shoulder again and again. With a sad expression, he said in a heavy voice, "You are a good boy. Don't have too much psychological pressure. Your father is gone, but your uncle is still here. In the future, I will take on the responsibility and obligation of educating you. I believe that you will become an excellent swordsman, just like your father." Chiba Halmu's face turned red because of Fang Yan's slaps, but he couldn't lose his temper, because everything the interpreter said seemed to be for his own good. Chapter 423. The sky was bright, but because of the cold weather, the snow on the ground was still hard and squeaky when one stepped on it. Fang Yin accompanied Chiba Keiru on a small road in the countryside. The two of them were silent. They could only hear each other's breathing and the sound of the snow under their feet. Chiba Keiru was dressed in plain clothes and looked exhausted. There were wrinkles on her knees from kneeling for a long time, and there were some ashes on her hair. The past 2 days had really tormented the girl. She hadn't even taken a hot shower until now. Are all men like this? Chiba Keiru suddenly asked. Although she could already communicate in the Huaxia language after a long period of hard work, there were still some obstacles when it came to talking about things that were too profound. Therefore, she spoke very slowly. It was as if she was trying very hard to articulate her words. What? Fang Yin thought about it a few times before he understood her question. If there's a big country, there's no small family? If there's justice, there's no personal feelings? Chiba Keiru asked with reddened eyes. There were many things that she couldn't understand, so she asked her teacher alone. Fang Yin was her language teacher, and also the homeroom teacher of class 9. Fang Yin was silent. It was too difficult to answer. "Mr. Fang, is my father really a good person?" Chiba Keiru asked. "Yes," Fang Yin said firmly. He had to give a definite answer. Otherwise, the death of Chiba Keiru would be meaningless. If he couldn't get the forgiveness of his beloved daughter, what was the point of being loved by the whole country? He's a good person and a great person. Then, Mr. Fang, will you be like him? For the country, for justice, you'll sacrifice yourself. You won't care about your wife's loneliness, your children's sorrow, and you'll say goodbye to them forever without saying goodbye? Fang Yin thought for a long time and answered honestly. "I can't do it. I'm too greedy. I want to grow old with my wife. I want to be the guardian of my daughter forever. I want to take care of my parents and the old drunkard when they die. So I won't choose that way." Chiba Kaori stopped and looked at Fang Yin. She smiled silently, like a chrysanthemum blooming quietly in the wind. "Mr. Fang, thank you for your answer," Chiba Kaori said softly. As wives, they hope to have a husband who will never leave them. As children, they want a father who can lean on them. My father was great, but he wasn't a good husband, a good father. Fang Yin wanted to say something to comfort her, but it seemed that all words had lost their power. "Don't try to comfort me, because all consolation is useless. Sadness has always been a personal thing." Chiba Kaori saw through Fang Yan's hesitant expression and took the initiative to say, "My father is gone, and my mother is going back to China. My brother will also go back." In Japan, he will receive guidance from the seniors in the dojo. My father's death will make him mature, and I believe that he will definitely become an outstanding swordsman. I will stay in Huaxia to accompany my father. Perhaps his soul has already reached Japan, to the place he fought for his entire life, to the Pheasant Mountain where he diligently practiced his swordsmanship every morning and night. But his body is still buried here. I want to stay and accompany him. He wasn't a good father, but I still love him as much as before. Will you return to Rosefinch? Fang Yin asked. Chiba Kaori shook her head and said, "No." "I knew it." Fang Yin sighed softly. Chiba Kaori was an outstanding student, and a hard-working one. Because she had just arrived and had a language barrier, she had to understand the meaning of the words before she learned any subject. She had been at the bottom of the class for the previous few exams, but she was already above average for the final exam. Any responsible teacher would not want to lose a good student in their class. Mr. Fong, I don't hate you. I didn't leave Rosefinch because I hate you, Chiba Kaori said. I'm just afraid. I'm afraid that every time I go to class, I will think of my father when I see you. Until now, I still can't accept the fact that he has left. I can't bear that kind of suffering, and I'm worried that it will make me break down. I will leave Rosefinch, and I won't enter any other school. I will learn something that interests me in the future, and my favorite is the tea ceremony. I think that's what my father is happy to see. He wants me to focus on what I like. And I always feel that I still have a lot of time. Fong Yin looked at Chiba Kaori with sincerity and said, I respect your choice. We won't be teacher and student in the future, but we will still be friends. If you need anything, just come to me. No, you will always be my teacher, Chiba Kaori said seriously. People in Huaxia believe that a teacher for a day is a father for life. You are my teacher for a day, and you will always be my teacher. I understand everything you have done for my father. Perhaps Chiba Hao doesn't understand it now, but he will one day. He will know how magnanimous he must be to be able to help his opponent like this. She bowed deeply to Fong Yen, then jogged toward the dojo. There, her mother, brother, and Phantom were waiting to leave Swallow Dock with her. They would stay in Huaqing for a short while, then fly to Japan from there. To them it was a sad country. Her figure was thin, and her long hair was flying. Her back view was so desolate and sorrowful. She was smart, beautiful, and a girl who had lost her father. Fong Yin couldn't bear to look at her anymore, so he looked in another direction. Hey, are you dumbfounded? A girl with a rosy face shouted at him. No matter how bad the haze was, the sudden sight of two bright and beautiful faces would immediately brighten one's mood. This was a common problem for men. Two beautiful girls appeared in front of Fong Yen. One was wearing a white shirt, white pants, and a pair of white sports shoes. It was Yi Wen, whom he hadn't seen for a few days. The other one was Leaf, who was wearing a red down jacket, white jeans, and a pair of black leather boots. They were both young and beautiful. One was elegant, and the other was cute. They were both beautiful. Seeing Fong Yin looking at them without saying anything, Yi shouted impatiently, Hey, I'm talking to you. Didn't you hear me? I didn't expect such a beautiful girl to like such a shameless man. There are so many idiots nowadays. Yi obviously misunderstood the relationship between Fong Yen and Chiba Kaoru, and regarded Chiba Kaoru's action of running away as Fong Yan's heartless betrayal of girls. Yi started her studies in Swallow Dock. Because her parents worked in Yinjing for a long time, she transferred her school registration to Yinjing City. Although she lived in Yinjing City, she often went to Swallow Dock. Her growing up was almost the history of Fong Yan's cheap deeds. The competition between her cousin Yi Ro and Fong Yan every year was the biggest drama of the year that she looked forward to the most. She had watched the competition between Yi Wen and Fong Yan since she was 5 or 6 years old, and now she had grown up watching the competition between Yi Wen and Fong Yan. As a result, she had seen Fong Yan's ugly face, all kinds of shameless expressions, all kinds of funny ways of begging for mercy, and all kinds of ways of running away. This almost subverted her outlook on life and values. Until now, she was still wondering why a man could have such a shameful side. Therefore, she wasn't talking nonsense when she said that Fong Yan was a shameless man. It was the result of watching the competition for 10 years. Moreover, because she was the most hardcore audience, she gnashed her teeth at Fong Yan's behavior every time. She was sharp-tongued and liked to sneer at Fong Yan. Fong Yan was not a man who was willing to suffer losses, and his way of fighting back made her so angry that her liver hurt. In the competition before the new year, Fong Yan ran away, which made her extremely angry. How could such a guy with no chivalry be her sister's opponent? Fong Yan was a little angry and said, You can scold me for being shameless, but don't scold your sister. What's wrong with her liking me? In terms of eloquence, 10 Yezi were not as good as 1 Fang Huahua. Sure enough, Yezi was ashamed and annoyed. She said angrily, "How can you be so shameless? I'm not talking about my cousin. My sister doesn't like you." "How do you know your sister doesn't like me? What if she likes me? You said that those who like me are idiots. Isn't that calling your sister an idiot?" Fang Yin said to Yi Wen, who looked calm and indifferent, as if she didn't care about anything. "Of course I know. How could I not know?" Yezi reached out and took Yi Wen's arm, saying, "My sister is such an excellent, elegant, and beautiful woman. How could she like a man with no taste, no looks, and a vicious mouth like you? Do you think my sister is blind? Only the person involved knows about this kind of thing. What right do you, an outsider, have to say such things? Okay, then I'll let the person involved tell you personally." Yezi turned around and took Yi Wen's arm, saying, "Sister, tell him. Do you not like him?" Yi Wen looked at Yezi in silence. "Sister, just tell him." Yezi showed her divine skill of acting coquettishly again. The girls of Swallow Dock didn't know how to act coquettishly, but they knew how to roll up their sleeves and fight. Yezi had lived in Yanjing City for a long time, so she learned this powerful skill. She shook her petite body and said, "Sister, say something. Say something. I want him to be convinced of his defeat." "I like him," Yi Wen said softly. In an instant, the wind stopped, the clouds dispersed, and everything was still. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.